later. Thank you for having
Yeah,
us. Everybody,
ab-
just say hello to Melissa and Denial. Thank you to Melissa and
absolutely.
Denial's community for having us. It's one of the fun parts of this is the shared community part. So,
Yeah,
everybody meet
absolutely.
everybody.
Yes, everybody meet everybody, and I love that now we have like a shared chat, which is always so fun.
It's so
Um,
nice. Yeah.
But welcome on in, guys. So, if you, one, don't know me, because we do have a shared chat, my name is MelissainDeNile. I am in denial in more ways than one, and I am an Egyptologist, archaeologist, and I stream Egyptology, archaeology games during the week. And then we do lectures, guest lectures, and discussions on the weekends. And this is a series I call Beyond Denial. And I give one lecture a month about something about ancient Egypt or archaeology, and then I bring on guests once a month. So we're in season 3, and we have talked to so many amazing educational streamers or TikTokers or lots of my friends. And it is just always such a great community to bring in more and more people to talk about. And just some of the lay of the land. We're just doing a chill discussion. So questions are absolutely, and we are talking about both of our topics rather than just focusing on our guests. So questions are absolutely amazing on both ends. If you are in my chat, I do have a channel point that is lecture questions, and those are especially helpful if we don't want them to filter away in our shared chat. So you're always welcome to use the channel point if you're in my chat. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of go with the flow. We have such very similar, but like kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum with the art world. So I am expecting really great conversation. We will get started with just a quick bio about Casey, and then we'll get started. So, for all my friends, Casey is a former art teacher turned freelance artist and streamer. Her Twitch streams revolve around art studies and digital painting, with the occasional sculpting and traditional media work mixed in. She is always also involved in conservation work and uses her platform to spotlight endangered species. She led the Save the Vaquita Week initiative on Twitch in 2025, which brought together over 30 streamers and raised over 14,000 Canadian dollars and generated over 20,000 watch hours to help raise awareness about the critically endangered vaquita porpoise. Thank you so much, Casey, for being here. And kind of
Yeah.
just to start us off, how did you get into art? I know it's the simplest question, but
Uh, yeah. Man. I mean, I'm definitely one of those kids that just never stopped drawing. I
yeah.
find that like most kids are into art, and then
Mm-hmm.
some kids become aware of other kids being quote unquote better at art than them, and then they stop being into art. And I think that's
Yeah.
most people's trajectory. I used to be an elementary school art teacher, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school to be a teacher. Didn't go to art school, couldn't afford that. But I've always loved drawing, and I always kind of knew I wanted to do illustration. So
Mm-hmm.
I did the long game. I got the safer in some ways degree, and I went the teaching route. And I did enjoy teaching, but always in the back of my mind, I was like, I really do want to give this art thing a try.
Mm-hmm.
So if yeah, I don't know. If anyone's curious, you can come check out my socials or something. I'm not gonna drop those here, but uh, yeah, I like to draw like animals and nature, and it's one of those things that's always kept me really interested in the world around me, and it's hard to stop. It's kind of like I'm sure you feel similarly with like ancient Egypt. It's like once you
Oh,
get fixated on something, it's like it just kind of even if you
don't
try to do something else,
don't look
you just
behind me. Like this
no,
is
I get
the
it.
the physical manifestations of that obsession.
Yeah, yeah. It just kind of takes hold of you, and you're like, well, I guess this is just my life now. Like, if I do something else, I'm only gonna think about this. Like, I'm only gonna
Yeah.
want to do this. So I'm just kind of at the very beginning stages, I think, of my art journey, as far
Mm.
as like making this a sustainable thing. And I can go more into that later if you're interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always, to answer your question, I've always been. I've just never stopped drawing. I was that kid that didn't stop drawing, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It has been so long since I've drawn and done any sort of art, but I was really really into it, and for god, probably 4 or 5 years when I was in late elementary school, I took art lessons with two of my best friends, and every Friday we would go to an art teacher who was very much a huge mentor to me as a person in general, and she was genuinely one of the most lovely women that I've ever met in my life, and she
Aw.
encouraged us in so many different ways. And I I probably haven't drawn in years or done like active. I've done a lot of crafting. I'm definitely, I think, moved into more the crafting side,
Hey,
and
that's a
like
good sign.
anything I need to randomly make, I'm like, okay, I can make a Nemes headdress, like a pharaoh's headdress out of foam. I can do that. And but like actively made art, it has been a very long time for me. But again, because I just picked up another obsession, and uh, art history is very much that way, and it is so much wider in a lot of ways, because it's like, okay, what do you want to focus on? You can go over there, you can go over there, like you can just go in the entire gamut of art and history. And so
Yeah.
it is one of those things that I always loved going to museums, and I just was like, well, I could look at the art that is technically functional items that ancient peoples have studied and used. And that is where I like really lie. Like I am very much, I have like my tiny little time periods of art that I do like after that, but it's like I really want to see the pieces that are more function than aesthetic, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we, for so much of human history, what we can glean from like about cultures is kind of wrapped up with art. Like art and music, I feel like are
Yeah,
those things that just kind of transcend culture, and they tell us so much about one another. But art preserves a little better than music in a lot of
that
ways,
is
and so
true.
you can really, you can really learn a lot from those things. And I think that's probably. I have maybe some questions later for you about that, about things that you've
Yeah.
seen. But yeah, I think they tie really well together. And I also kind of find that like people who are in the scientific fields, education fields, art
Hmm.
fields, we all tend to be very like easy, like we fixate on things, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what is the driving passion. I sort of just feel like we're all cut from the same cloth, and we just all went different directions with our
Yeah.
hyperfixations or the things that we can't stop thinking about, and just like let our lives kind of be guided by that passion.
As
So
one
I,
of
I do find a
my
lot of camaraderie between artists and like so many fields because of
Yeah.
that. Like whether it's history or math or science, like
Hmm.
if you're a curious person, like there's probably something that an artist can connect with there, because we
Yeah.
all like the more we can learn as artists, the more we can make our art better, and I feel like the more we learn as people, the more we make the world better. And so
Yeah.
I love being kind of like adjacent to the education tracks in those ways, because it's kind of my people, I guess. Like I always feel like I
Yeah.
can
As
nerd
one
out
of my
about something
friends
together.
would openly say, we're just nerds, and we will
Hmm.
talk about it as much as you are going to let us talk about it. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
it is very funny. I've talked about this sometimes on streaming, where like I'm deep in talking something. I've gone a rabbit hole. We are completely off the topic of the discussion, and then at one point I just suddenly, my brain just starts moving backwards, and I suddenly realize I am alone in a room by myself,
Yeah.
just talking to imaginary people, and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Yes.
But
This-
it is
yeah, this
so,
doesn't
it is
work.
so amazing like that, because it's just a place for us nerds to rant about all the things that we love to do.
For sure. It is funny you say that. Sometimes I have that sudden awareness of the fact that I'm literally in a room by myself talking loudly, and I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, am I enabling my future crazy lady phase by doing this now in life, by developing this habit of just loudly talking to myself? Like, am I gonna be? Do you
Mm,
ever? I don't
yes,
know. Sometimes
yes,
I wonder.
and as somebody who always is secretly kind of talking to herself, like
Yeah, same.
I've literally noticed the other day I was in a grocery store, and I was like literally talking to myself, and I was like, "Oh, Melissa, you gotta stop that.
Yeah,
Somebody's
I do
gonna
that
find
too.
you." And I'm like, I'm just
Yep.
so comfortable sometimes completely talking to myself and reassuring myself, "Okay, wait, I gotta do this first, and then I gotta do this," and then I'm like,
Do you
wait a
do you
second.
find like you were like that before streaming and it's just gotten worse, or is this something that you think has happened because of streaming?
I definitely think I was a little bit like that before, but I will say for specific
Same.
reasons. So before I really ever wanted to become an archaeologist or Egyptologist or anything, I was really into creative writing, and I've been writing stories since I was like 13. And I think that is where a lot of my art kind of derived, is that I'm like, okay, actually we're going to go start to write instead. And a lot of the writing was play acting and talking to myself. And so I think there was
Yeah.
that aspect of it. But even my lovely grandmother, who passed a couple years ago, she would sing to herself, and she would make up stories to herself. Like she would sing that, oh, I'm washing the dishes or washing, and I that is something that I have done ever since because of her very much.
That's cute. I mean, I do that. Didn't have an example, but I do that too. I sing about everything that's happening to me. It's like I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. A tick. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's I think a comfort in some way, and again, like
I think
reassuring.
I started doing it during like when I learned to drive. It was like a way to avoid road rage. So like when somebody does something that irritates me, I just sing about it. I'm like, why are you
Honestly,
doing that? It is very confusing. And then it just keeps me from getting angry.
honestly, completely valid. Yeah. It
Yeah,
makes so
and I
much
think
sense.
it's just kind of bled into the rest of my life. It's like, oh, it's time to wash the dishes, and I need to fill the bird
Yeah.
feeder before I forget.
It's just that constant stream. It's just
Yeah,
singing, it's just talking slowly.
yeah. It's like if I don't, then it just bubbles around in here and it distracts me. So it's like maybe that's what it is too. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of wonder sometimes if there's not just like an increased level of people who are on like some kind of like a hyperactive spectrum that
Yeah.
are into these fields, because there really does seem to be such a high crossover of people who are like just have the ability to hyperfocus but also can't make this stop, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's definitely, there's the Venn diagram is very very much overlapping in a lot of
I think
ways,
so too.
for sure. I got a very great question from Matt that I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer, but are there any depictions of extinct animals in ancient Egyptian art? And oh boy, okay, so there's so many animals. So for we'll say this, there are animals that might not even exist that are mythical. There's not a lot in comparison to other ancient cultures. Egyptians don't have a lot of like hugely mythical animals. Obviously we have a sphinx. A sphinx is like really not depicted in art minus like a statue. Like you don't see a sphinx in a hunting scene or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And the very distinct difference, there are two types of sphinxes. There are Greek sphinxes and Egyptian sphinxes. And the only difference is that Greek sphinxes are always typically women. Egyptian sphinxes typically are men because they're meant to be the face of the pharaoh. And Greek sphinxes have wings. Egyptian sphinxes don't fly. So they are just a lion with a head of a human, and typically it is a man.
Which one came first?
That is a very great
Egyptian
question.
one,
I'm pretty sure it's an Egyptian one. Yeah, because
so I wonder if that was just something that convergently came to be, or if it was influenced.
it's definitely probably influenced a lot of. There are a lot of very small motifs that you see in early Greek art that came from Egypt, and vice versa. When the funny thing about it is that if you actually put those timelines, the Greek and Egyptian timeline overlapping, they're like, the Greek is barely touching the Egyptian timeline. So there are like proto-Greeks that are probably in the middle kingdom of Egypt, which is like halfway through the time period. So it doesn't overlap as easy as people I think it does. Egyptian is way older. But otherwise, we've talked about this semi-recently, there are something called a sauropard, which I always can't say, but it's like Serropard maybe, and they only show up in pre-dynastic art, and they are essentially like a leopard with the neck of a serpent, and they're really long, and so they, on the Narmer palette, which is a very famous pre-dynastic palette, they have like their bodies and their necks intertwined to create a circle. And actually it ties very well into art because it's a cosmetic palette. So the circle is typically meant to grind down the pigments to make makeup, or in some cases paint. And so they are a mythical creature that you see really only in the pre-dynastic period. And then the other big one is the god Set, who is not clear if he is a real animal. So one of the proposed options is that he is an extinct animal. He looks like an anteater. He sort of has this very long nose. Yeah, you can look him up. He has this long nose, and then his ears are very rectangular. They kind of stick straight up, and they are sort of big, two kind of thin rectangles. And some people say there's like so many options of what he could be. Some people say he's a donkey. Some people say he's an anteater. Some people say he is a giraffe. Like there's so many options. The other thing is that when he walks with four legs. He looks kind of like a dog. Like he's kind of relatively in proportion, but his tail sticks straight up and almost has like three little pieces that kind of go like this. Okapi is another option that people have proposed because that is an African animal. It does definitely look very close to an okapi.
I could see okapi, but you'd think it would have some striping or something. Okapis have very painted faces. I was feeling like it was more like a stylized dog of some kind. But I could see anteater.
One of the my personal opinion is that he is a made-up creature, because Set is a god of chaos. He is meant to be. He's not necessarily an evil god, but he is meant to be chaotic. He is meant to be crazy. He kills his brother Osiris and tries to gain to the throne. And so he is a lot of just different things. And we already have evidence that ancient Egyptians made combination animals. So took different parts of animals and made a combination, which actually ties me into one of the things I was going to talk about today, which is my new painting that I showed everybody.
Ooh, painting.
And you actually, surprisingly, have actually met this artist, and I talked with her about this yesterday. This is by an artist named Sierra Barnes, and I was telling her about me being in Egypt and doing all of this stuff, and I was saying I was doing a guest lecture, and she was like, "Wait, is that Casey?" And you guys follow each other on Instagram, and I was like, "This is the funniest thing that this is happening." But this is the goddess Ammit. She is only in the underworld. And she has the head of a crocodile, the forepart of a lion, so the chest and the front legs, and then the back end is a hippo. And she is distinctly depicted as those three options. Those are the three most terrifying animals in ancient Egypt. So to me, it appears that they have that option and they sort of already know that they can combine animals if they want, or they can make up animals if they want. And it's not surprising to me that a chaotic deity would be a made-up animal.
Yeah, and like humans are creative. It's not like the idea of a chimera is like completely and totally like can only be influenced by the outside either.
Exactly. And so I feel like those are the only sort of examples of like, they're kind of mostly fake deities, but like it has been proposed that Set was an extinct animal. And also one of the reasons that you mentioned it doesn't really look like an okapi is because it's always depicted all black.
Yeah, that was my first. I was like, yeah.
The color black is indicative of rebirth and death, and is essentially with the dark soil that would take over Egypt during the flood season every year. And without that dark soil, they would not live, because it is a desert. And so the other option is our god Anubis, who is always also depicted black, even though jackals, which is what he is, there is no genetic black jackal. Nowadays, when you look at jackals, there's striped jackals. They're kind of the color of like foxes, not really very, very vibrant red, but kind of like a dusty brown and stuff. And so, again, the other option is people have proposed that there was a black jackal that has been extinct, and it's possible. But we also know that color is extremely important to the ancient Egyptians, and black is one of those colors that is just always, when it is depicting something, it is always depicting what it wants to depict.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see either one of those. It definitely looked more dog-like to me when I first saw it, but I also know that it's all stylized, right? Like, and I'm not as familiar with what that might look like as you would be, so.
Yeah, ancient Egypt is all about idealism, about whatever is ideal to the person, and so they are going to make everything look exactly as they want it to. And I did my thesis on ancient Egyptian dogs, and so they have very distinct styles throughout time, and they're similar, and they do get mixed up with jackals sometimes, but it really depends on the time period, and you can see what they thought the ideal dog was at any point in time. Which is very cool because it probably doesn't actually mean anything with actual breeding of dogs or what the dogs actually looked like, because there's a very distinct divide. These dogs look like this and these dogs look like this.
I get really, and I'm sure you get more frustrated about this than I do, but when I hear people like the Ancient Aliens crowd or somebody like look at these very stylized ancient drawings and be like, no, they were depicting literally what people look like. why? Why would you assume that they weren't capable of stylization? Like,
Yeah.
do you think that just like appeared in the modern era? Like,
Yeah.
why?
It's
What do you,
so
what do you
hard.
need?
It's so hard because I understand it in that very, very small portion where it's like, I understand that you look at art and you think it is depicting real life. I've told this to sort of people before that, like, you're never going to see a depiction of an ancient Egyptian going to the bathroom. That does not mean
Right.
that they didn't go to the bathroom. So, like,
That's a great
it is,
example.
it's a
Yeah,
great
I
example.
love
And the funniest one is I can only use that example with a few things because they do depict a lot. There are some images of some people vomiting after they're really drunk.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like,
Well, hey.
there are certain ones that I can't do that to because we do have depictions.
Yeah.
But, like, I've never seen a depiction of somebody going to the bathroom. And so it's just, it does not mean that they didn't do it. Like, and the
Yeah.
same thing with us. Like, if you look at the amount of content that we make a day, and that can be in the art world, that can be in social media, and they can be in lots of stuff, there are certain things that people don't talk about because it's just so normalized in our world.
True. Yeah, true.
And so it's just like, yeah, we're not gonna talk about it, we're not gonna record it. And like, if I always talk about this, that like archaeology of our new time period will never really be able to happen unless there is some sort of worldwide outage and we lose everything.
Yeah, I've heard the modern era referred to as the new dark ages. It's like, if people look back at this time in history, at least my understanding of why it's called the dark ages is that we just don't have a lot of records from that time.
Yeah.
And some other things too were going on, but like, we are very much in a time when there aren't physical records of what our culture looks like.
And it's
just
like,
a bunch of plastic is really going to be all that survives us, you know.
If our computers shut down in about 200 years, and before we get it to a
Probably
point where
will.
people who are not living to tell the story, things will be gone. And it's sort of that, again, like, you're probably never going to see everybody's order of all their food. Like, you're never going to know how many people DoorDash food all the time because it's just not going to be there.
It's just gonna be whatever survives in plastic is literally our legacy, unfortunately, I think.
Yeah.
Like plastic and maybe some metal objects, but
There's a very famous archaeology article, and I always forget what it's called, but it talks about how if the world ended and then all this stuff gets crazy, and people start excavating us in like 500, 200, or 5,000 years, that they're going to think that we worship a god of French fries and find all of the shrines to McDonald's all around the world. And it's a very famous article.
Don't forget the goddess of Starbucks.
The goddess with the two tails. Yeah, exactly.
The mermaid lady. And they're going to be like, why did they suddenly depict her without boobs? Like,
yeah.
this
exactly.
must have been a huge cultural shift. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really big phenomenon to think about, that like people are like, oh, somebody's going to dig me up. And I'm like, not really, but like there's going to be things that are just going to be lost to time if we don't start. And a lot of people, like, even I work for a city, and we talk about, okay, how is our archives department doing digital archives? Like, do we have a digital archivist, which is not a typical thing that is thought to have been needed up until this time, but it is.
Crazy.
It's just a wild thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Can I take the opportunity to maybe fire back a question at you that you asked, just for people in my community who maybe aren't familiar with what you do? What got you into? Can you tell us a little bit about your story, about like how you got into Egyptology or archaeology or both?
Yeah. I always describe it as it is from when I was a really little kid. My mother, there's a book series called the Magic Treehouse books. And I believe it's the second or the third book is called Mummies in the Morning. And I mean, it was just an amazing series for a young child, of watching a brother and sister both time travel and location, like essentially having a TARDIS. And it was just amazing. And when my mom bought me that mummy book, Mary Pope Osborne, the author, would also write nonfiction companion books for every so often for a couple of the books. And so my mom got the 2 sections. And so I got the really cool fiction book about these 2 siblings that just sounded amazing. And then I got all the accurate information together with it. And it was something that I was obsessed with as a kid, and I forced my family to go to a whole weekend in Philadelphia to go see the King Tut exhibit. And as I've described, literally ditched my parents because they kept saying, "Did you know this? Did you know this?" And I'm like, "I knew all these things. Stop talking to me." And I told myself, well, in the last room of the exhibit is probably going to be the mask. They would save it for last. And so I literally left my parents at like 11 years old and walked into the last room, and there was no mask because it does not leave Egypt anymore. And I was devastated.
I bet.
Devastated. And in between, as I mentioned, like, I really got into creative writing, and I sort of pushed the history aside because, as I've described, I live on the East Coast. I learned my Catholic schools, we just kept learning about the same time period of history over and over and over again, which is the early Americas. And I'm like, come on, people, let me get something else. Yeah. And when I was looking at colleges, I was really focused on creative writing, but I thought I needed a backup job. And my backup job would be archaeology, which anybody who knows anything about the archaeological field knows that is the biggest joke ever, because it makes you no money. My backup job for my creative writing career. But as soon as I started taking classes, it flipped so fast. I was like, wait a second. I could learn these things. I could do excavations. I could do all of these things. And it was just like a light bulb. And Egyptology only came up when I was a junior in college, and I studied abroad in England, and I realized, oh my God, I could take a class on Egyptian art and archaeology. And the craziest thing is we got to take it sitting inside the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Art and Archaeology, and I got to hold objects for the first time. And that was really like a huge turning point, and made me realize that I wanted to do Egyptology, and I wanted to study that in as specifically as I could, even though all of my archaeology training at that point had not been in Egypt, had been in historical American archaeology. And then Southern England and Rome, which were the other two wild ones. And the big change that made me move semi away from Egyptology and more into education came from, unfortunately, the toxic academia that I kind of experienced in grad school, and the sort of realization that I did not want to go that PhD route. It just seemed that is the only option for me in this moment. And I also did an internship I did a museum studies certificate, so I had to get museum internships. And I came back home and I did an internship at the current job that I have. And that was working at an archaeology museum and doing education and talking to kids in schools, doing an archaeology kids camp. And I was like, I know this isn't Egypt, but if I could work here for the rest of my life, I probably would. And now I'm here.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah. And the beginnings of MelissainDeNile was a full-blown pandemic project.
As many are.
As many are. Myself and Danny, paleontologizing, have very similar stories on two different completely fields, which makes me laugh a lot of times. I graduated from grad school in 2020. I was able to get my thesis done, and then I was just like, well, what do I do? And I had 2 more classes that I had to take, but they weren't for another 4 months. I had to take them like spring semester or something. So I had 6 months to sit in my parents' house, quarantined, and I was like, well, I could start writing a blog about ancient Egypt and posting on Instagram, and maybe then I'll start Twitch streaming. And yeah, almost 6 years later, here we are.
Nice. I mean, I think it's great. The former teacher in me loves the fact that there's people like yourself out here using this platform to share knowledge. I mean, I don't know. I know you went to TwitchCon as well, and I don't know if this was your experience too, but I feel like every other person I talked to at TwitchCon had like this like huge, like, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, oh yeah, on the side I'm a zoologist, or I'm a biologist, or I'm a mathematician, or I'm a programmer. Yeah. And they have like most people who stream have like these other skill sets. And I'm just like, do you have to talk to people about that stuff? Like when they're like, oh, well, I didn't know if anybody would be interested in that, but I really do feel like people would be, because like the odds are, if you're into it, somebody in your community probably is too. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I just think it's an oversight to not use this platform for a little bit of education and outreach, especially if you have a field you're passionate about. Like, I get it if you have a job that's just a job and it happens to be
Yeah.
science or tech or whatever, but if you're passionate about stuff, I feel like that really, like, streaming is such a good opportunity for that to kind of bleed through and get
Yes.
people kind of inspired by what inspires you. You know, and
Yeah.
I think I don't know, I hope to see the education side of Twitch grow even
Yeah.
more.
It's very funny when I went to TwitchCon, especially, like, it felt like it felt very similar. I've told this story before, where I went to Catholic school my entire life. I lived in what I consider a small town because of just the small community I was in. And I would walk around, like, at big events that we would have in our town. I'd be like, where are all the people that I know? And that is exactly what I felt like at TwitchCon, because I didn't realize until I was at TwitchCon that I'm like, oh my god, Twitch is so much more things, and I'm like, than all these education streamers. And I've made a lot of friends from that are not because I play video games during the week. I've made other friends who are not education streamers, but it was definitely like, where is this person? Like, I'm looking for all my education streamers that I know are here, but it was just such a vast
It was
space.
so big. I was really glad for anyone who ever goes to TwitchCon, look for the meetups, the community meetups.
Yes.
That is where you're gonna find like. I was so glad the art and science meetup was like together,
Yeah.
because then I could find all the art people and then find like some of the science and education people, and it was nice that they were in the same space. Even I thought that was kind of funny.
I wish it wasn't the literal last event of TwitchCon, though. Oh
It
my
would have been nice
gosh.
to have it a little sooner. I mean, somebody's got to go last. I get it, but
Yeah.
like,
It was a little like, come on,
two of the
especially
best
because
categories on Twitch, and they're the very last day.
especially because I was like, I really wanted to go and meet like new people,
Yeah.
but it's like I can't find you guys. Like, it's too hard to find it. I'm like waiting for that meetup, and I was like, it's literally the last.
Literally
event.
the last panel of the last day was.
We were
art
literally
and
they are
science, and I
kicking
was
us
like,
out of the building, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is fine.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, hopefully, if I make it back this year, hopefully they'll do it a little sooner. But
Yeah.
we do
Here's
have a
hoping.
question in chat from Fonty.
Yeah.
A question for both streamers. What is your favorite movie connected to either of your professions? I'm gonna let you go first because I need to think about this one for a second.
Yeah. So I'm an Indiana Jones fan through and through.
Yeah.
It's Harrison Ford is an obsession. The bathroom that's attached to this office is Indiana Jones themed. There's a lot. I know it's not accurate. We accept that. We just move on. I am actually not a big fan of the Mummy series, and that is not because I don't technically like it. I did not watch it until college, and I do not have. I knew too much, and I don't have any nostalgia to carry me through, which is what I have with Indiana Jones. I have seen it. I like it. I will say I have had kids typically ask me, like, do scarabs eat people? And like anything that like
Oh no.
does kind of perpetuate like fear, I don't want to do that. And so that is a big problem with me, is like any sort of scary mummy movies. I'm always like, come on guys, can we make sure it's not scary? Like, mummies are actual human beings. They are not cursed. They are not all of these things.
Right.
So Indiana Jones is obviously a really big one. Being raised religious, Prince of Egypt by far, just like, it's just so good in so many ways.
Yeah,
and I would say, minus that it's a biblical story, the visuals pretty accurate, honestly, in a lot of ways. Minus the pyramids being like right behind, like in one of the biggest shots, the pyramids are like immediately
right.
behind.
Well,
like,
you know, you gotta go for that drama.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would say my most underrated is going to be the 1932 Mummy, which is one of a personal favorites of mine. It is the original Mummy movie. It's the Mummy movie that inspired the 1999 movie. It has a roughly the same story, but it's like from the 1930s. So I think it is like actively kind of like spooky, not scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've watched it like every Halloween. And it's really short too. But yeah, I think those are probably... There's not a lot of archaeology movies, like just basic archaeology. There is a fairly good one, although I've heard some archaeologists don't like it, and it's called The Dig. And it's about Sutton Hoo, which is a massive ship burial that was used, I think it's vaguely Viking age. I am not that's obviously not my time period specialty. But it's with Ralph Fiennes and a couple other big stars, and I think I really enjoyed it. I found it fascinating because it's just a time period I don't know a lot about, but it's specifically about the excavation of the site, which is cool.
Yeah. So you had great answers. My answer is not going to be great. My answer is going to be a little bit beating around the bush, I think.
That's okay.
The question for anyone who missed it was, what are your favorite movies respective to your fields? So I'm going to answer this, I guess, in two ways. So I'm an artist, right? And I was actually a big part of the inspiration of why I even do art in the first place is because I grew up watching tons of like Disney movies and animation, and I was just so inspired by the artistry. I was that kid who like watched all of the making of back when they still had those,
Oh,
little
yeah.
DVDs. I would watch all the special features and like just was so fascinated by the process of like, what you mean for the Lion King? They brought a lion into the studio and they drew the lion? Like that's
I
amazing. I
loved
want to
those
do that.
clips. I loved those clips. They would always play them at like the beginning in like
Yeah.
the beginning of the ads of some other movie I would watch, and I loved
Mhm.
looking at those clips. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
it's
that's so
fascinating.
funny.
Or like the Lord of the Rings making of, and like how
Mhm.
like all the artistry that went into those movies and all the concept art. I'm sitting next to my bookshelf. I have tons of like art of
Mhm.
books from various movies
Yeah.
and films and shows. So like concept art and the animation industry and the movie making industry in general has really inspired me for sure.
Mhm.
And so like it feels like almost a cop out to just tell you my favorite animated movies because I'm not an animator, but like that is an
But
art and it is what got me into to it. But I will say like I'm also a teacher, so like
mhm.
that is my training, I guess, and I do incorporate some education stuff, whether intentionally or unintentionally. We talk about this a lot. I do. For anyone who's not familiar with me, I do this thing called the art gym in the morning. It's literally the idea is for me. I want to do studies to get better. Like I know I need to be
Mhm.
doing observational studies, and most artists that I know also know they should be doing studies, and we just collectively avoid doing them because it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like as much fun, basically, as just doing what you want. And so I'm kind of doing accountability stuff on stream, but inadvertently, we all kind of end up learning together, and we start talking about concepts of art and like foundational art practices, and
Mhm.
it just becomes like an educational space. And I think my teachery, I get my chat teases me a lot about being kind of teachery in those moments. So on the teaching side of things, plus a little bit of the art, I would say if I had to pick a movie that like encapsulated both of those fields, for me that movie is Pixar's Soul. I
Oh,
don't know if anyone has seen Pixar's Soul. It went kind of under the radar. I think it
I
came
have
out during
not. I know
COVID
it,
and
but I have not.
a lot of people missed it. Tragic that you missed it. If anyone out there is in a creative field or you're somebody who's even just like chasing a dream or starting a business or doing anything like that, I cannot recommend that movie enough. It's basically about it. I don't want to spoil it, but the teacher part of it definitely, like the main character is a teacher. No spoilers in chat, please, because it's a great film. But that movie inspires me so much, and I connect with that so much. I think every artist, musician, scientist, teacher, like anybody should watch this. And I usually watch it like at the start of the year to kind of
Mhm.
like reinvigorate me for like
Oh,
why I'm doing anything I'm doing in the first place. But it's like one of the most life affirming and like I don't know. I just think it has a beautiful message. So Pixar's Soul is probably my answer for that, even though it's not really an art movie and it's not really a education movie, but it's a mix of both. So
I love that. I do think Pate. I think Pate is in your chat, and I think needs some volume adjustments. Um,
oh, I'm so sorry.
that's okay. It was not too long ago.
Okay.
I
Is
think
I
you
could
need
have
to
I
be
could
a
have
little
maybe
louder.
talked away from the microphone. I get a little excited sometimes. My microphone is kind of targeted. I can turn that off since we're not doing music. Is this better for anybody in my chat? Can you hear me a little bit better now?
And you can
Let me
always
know
feel
if
free to
that's any
lower
better.
me. That is totally fine.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Kate.
This is the combination of I talk very loud and Casey talks very quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's Soul is one that you somehow didn't miss. Yeah, it's an amazing film. Um
um,
yeah, no, it's great.
One of the things I following up with, what is your favorite animated movie? By art. Like
Me?
distinctly, like
Oh,
it doesn't need to necessarily be the story, or maybe it could be a combination of the art really did carry the story, but like
yeah.
just by how it looks.
Oh man, that is such a hard question. So I and let me know if I need to adjust the volume again. I did tweak some things just now. Um yeah, I would have to say honestly my favorite like it's hard to say favorite versus like what I find most visually beautiful too cuz like
Yes,
some of the movies that I think are absolutely gorgeous aren't necessarily movies that I love to watch over and over, but
absolutely.
they're beautiful masterpieces. Um we actually did like a top 10 animated list not too long ago, so I have this kind of fresh
I
on
love
my
this.
mind. It's too hard with 3D. There's too many
Mm,
options, so I kind of limit mine to 2D because I'm
okay.
also more of a 2D artist. I mean, I work
Yeah.
digitally, but my work is very like two-dimensional when it comes out in prints, and I do stickers and stuff. So
Yeah.
like I would say Prince of Egypt is definitely probably the number one. I think that movie it's like an actual masterpiece.
It's so
Beautiful music, beautiful artistry, beautiful art direction, beautiful storytelling. Like I really do think it's like one of the most not just best animated movies, but maybe a perfect film or very close to a perfect film in a lot of ways. I've never met anybody who watched that and was like, nope, I hated it. Like it's good. It's just a good movie. But it's beautiful too. Like the artistry of that movie is absolutely stunning. Like the backgrounds, pretty much anything that Nathan Fowkes is in. He's a famous. I don't know if anyone in chat knows him, but he's a very very well known concept artist and background artist. And he worked on that movie as well as a few others. But I would say that one, Iron Giant. If anyone has not seen the Iron Giant, that is also, in my opinion, an animation masterpiece.
So long. I couldn't even tell you when I saw that last.
It's very, I will say, give it a rewatch. The messaging is very relevant to today, and I will leave it at that. But it is a really good film. So yeah, I would say those are probably at the top of my list. Anastasia, Don Bluth, Anastasia, another masterpiece. Beautiful backgrounds, beautiful music, beautiful storytelling. Like truly one of the best animated films. Is that one of your favorites too?
That is by far my favorite animated movie of all time.
It's a really good choice. It's a really good one.
Also, I also literally saw my cousin in their high school version of Anastasia the musical last night, and so I've been listening to the music.
There's a musical version. Nice.
Yes, and you gotta give it some leeway. It has made a lot of changes. Sadly, Rasputin is not in it. It takes a much more realistic and good, but also I think they made the villain silly. I think he's kind of weak, but the music is obviously still beautiful and it's still amazing. But I've been listening to it like on constant repeat since I saw it yesterday. But yeah, Anastasia's always been my favorite movie of all time.
It's so good.
Visually, a lot of like, I've always loved Studio Ghibli, so it's very hard for me to pick one of those. Because Howl's Moving Castle is by far my favorite one. I was about to say that's my favorite Ghibli movie, and that's on my list too. Is Howl's. It is my ultimate comfort movie. But I love Howl's. Yeah. It's my ultimate comfort movie. If I ever feel sad, I watch that movie. Aww. But I honestly think one of the most beautiful Studio Ghiblis is an underrated one, and I think a lot of people don't know about it because it makes sense why it was not promoted in the United States, because it's kind of anti-United States. It is, oh my god, if this always happens to me and now I forget the name of it. The Wind Rises.
Oh, The Wind Rises.
The Wind Rises.
I saw it, but it's been a while since I've seen it.
God. The Wind Rises ruined me emotionally, but it also has some of the most beautiful scenes, and it's kind of like historically accurate. It's got a lot of actual pieces of history with so it's technically based on a real life person, and it's based on some of his diaries, and he is a person who I forget his name at the moment, but he designed the planes that attacked the United States in Pearl Harbor.
I remember the plot of the story because I remember the plane draftsmanship.
Yeah,
was, like, phenomenal.
And it's really cool. There's lots of really cool pictures of like draftsmanship, and then there's this massive in his childhood. There's this massive earthquake that hits Tokyo, and it burns like almost half the city, and that is just like almost like one of the craziest visuals like I've ever seen, and it is. It ruined me very much emotionally, especially the ending, which I won't spoil. But oh my god, I think it is one of his most beautiful films.
There's so many good Ghibli movies, like, and I see people in chat mentioning a few others too, like Grave of the Fireflies. I think that's one of those films that's very important to watch. It will never be a casual watch. And
I have never watched it, and I don't know if I ever will be able to. I'm too scared.
It's a very intense film. It's important in the same way that Schindler's List is important, I think.
Yes,
but you don't like casually watch Schindler's List for fun, you know, like it's it's one of those movies. But if you want a Ghibli movie that I think has really fallen under the radar for any animation fans out there, even like history and mythology fans, you'd probably love this film if you haven't seen it. The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Mm-hmm. That movie caught me by surprise. I sobbed so hard at the end of that movie, and I wasn't expecting it at all. It was maybe it was just where I was in my life at the time, but like that one hit me out of nowhere.
Also
a very beautiful and interesting.
Another very underrated one is Porco Rosso, which
again, you're like,
it's about a pig. It doesn't matter, and I'm like, the ending like I watched this with my brother, who's like, oh yeah, I like Porco Rosso, and I was like, I've never watched this one. I have no idea what it's about. And then I was like, at the end, I was like, God dang it, what did
I
they
need to
do to
rewatch
me?
that one. I was really distracted when I watched that movie. I was hanging out at a friend's house. That
Yeah.
one and the one about all the Tanuki. I
Oh
forget what
yeah.
that one was called. But I watched both of those back to back at a friend's house, but we were like goofing off and I didn't
Yeah,
really
you
pay
you
attention.
gotta sit
I
down and
should
watch Porco
rewatch it.
Rosso, because
I
dang.
did see, if it's okay to keep nerding about animation for a minute, because I am
Yeah,
very like, this is one of my
absolutely.
hyperfixations. I saw Dr. Hubbs mention that it's ironic now that Anastasia is now considered a Disney princess, when the whole reason that Bluth Studios even existed was because Don Bluth was trying to exit
Yeah.
from Disney. But a lot of people for
Mhm.
years and years would call it a Disney movie, and we always had to be like, no,
It's
no,
not a
no, it's
Disney
not
movie.
Disney.
Not
Now it's like,
Disney.
dang it, like
Now it is.
technically
I guess it
owned by
is.
Disney now, yeah. Which is
Yeah.
so sad. But Don Bluth's movies also, if people have missed some of his 80s films, like
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have seen them, but I would say a very close second for me with a Bluth film would have to be the Mrs. The Rats of Nim.
Yeah.
It's a really cool, well animated film. But there's so many.
There's
Like
so many.
there's so many animated movies out there. That's why I had to be like, I can only think about the 2D.
Yeah.
Stop motion animation also blows my mind. If anyone has not seen like Kubo and the Two Strings, if
Oh
anyone
yeah.
in chat has not
That's
seen Kubo
great.
and the Two Strings, it is one of the most phenomenal bits of stop motion animation. I also really liked Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio that came out a few
Oh
years
yeah,
ago.
I haven't seen
If
that.
anyone has not seen that one, though, I would say, like, if you want to see some modern stop motion animation that is just stunning and
Mhm.
heartfelt, and especially the Pinocchio movie, like super well done with the
Yeah.
story, I recommend those films a lot. So I could go on about
I was
animation
gonna
for a
say,
long time.
I
I'm a
my
huge fan.
family has been obsessed with Wallace and Gromit for a very
Oh
long
god, yeah.
time, which like it was sort of
I
funny
love
is that
Chicken
like
Run.
a lot of people like I feel like didn't know about it, and my mom always describes it as my dad like he went into a toy shop and it was on a little tiny TV and it was playing and he thought it was so amazing and he brought it back and we all watched it, and it's just been a comfort stuff for us. And so stop motion animation has always amazed me, but it was always like, oh my god, Wallace and Gromit is like the top tier.
The
And
top tier.
I've loved that they've made like some more shorts and some more movies lately, because they're just like they're still so hysterical.
That studio, I think, is making a Pokemon movie. I think I just heard they are
Oh my
partnering. I think
god,
they got a gig from Nintendo and they're doing a which is great, because I
that's
know that
great.
Aardman Studios had some struggles and it's been a tough industry to kind of keep alive in general, stop motion.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that they're still getting work, but they do great stuff.
Yeah.
I did come to Wallace and Gromit later in life, so I don't think I have the same appreciation
Yeah.
that I would have had if I had that nostalgic
Yeah, no, absolutely.
association. But I loved Chicken Run as a kid.
Chicken Run is great too. Chicken Run is so
And
good.
I did see the second one, and it was pretty good too. I still love the first one. It's
me
always
see
hard
the
for a
second
sequel to
one.
match, but
think
they did
I
a pretty
might
good job
have.
with the second one, I have to say. Like it wasn't bad. Also, welcome in Raiders. We are here with Melissa and Denial today. Thank you so much for coming in and saying hi. We're doing a co-stream between like art and education and history. Melissa is an Egyptologist, and it's lovely to have you. Thank you so much. And if you
Welcome
guys
on
have
in.
any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We're just having kind of a community and group discussion about right now animation and art, but I'm sure we'll kind of wander all over the conversational highway for a while here.
Yeah, it is one of those things that I have always admired, because like I would probably rather watch animation than a lot of live action stuff, and mainly that's because I've been a huge Disney fan since I was a kid and would try to watch genuinely anything they could. But there are just some of the most amazing like TV shows that has so many great styles of animation that, and I will say there are definitely some that I did not like as much, that I just like didn't really like the style as a kid. It kind of creeped me out a little bit as a kid. The two main ones, and we've talked about this before on my channel, I never really liked As Told by Ginger. I thought their heads being perfectly round just was a little off-putting, and a lot of Ed, and Eddie. There was something about the messy.
Same.
The messiness.
Unpopular opinion. Did not like the animation style of that show either. Just very unpopular opinion that will probably get me canceled. I'm so sorry in advance.
No, it's
did
fine.
not like Ren and Stimpy for the same reason. It freaked me out as a kid. I was like, this is really grotesque in a way that I'm very uncomfortable about. And no shade to anybody who likes Ren and Stimpy, of course, but
same thing with Cat Dog for me. Cat Dog freaked me out.
Well,
The animation
I
is
feel-
fine, but Cat Dog freaked me out. I didn't like it. I didn't
Okay,
get
I
it.
don't mind Cat Dog as much because it was silly and I like animals. Courage the Cowardly Dog I wanted to like, but it also scared me. I was kind of a baby. I'm still I mean, okay, I say was.
I am still
my,
kind of a baby.
My chat knows that I'm easily jump scared. Like, I'm still kind of a baby, but
I am
was more
absolutely
of a
still
baby
kind of
as
a
a kid.
baby. I loved Courage for a really long time, and then they did the one episode, which I know everyone is gonna know if you've watched Courage, the Return the Staff episode, which
Remember.
hysterically is actually Egypt based. It's supposed to be a cursed mummy, but in my mind it doesn't make sense. They switched the animation to this, or Return the Slab. Sorry, yeah, not staff. Return the Slab. They switched the animation on you. It was not 2D animation. I don't know how to describe it, but it was more detailed. It was creepy. It was it looked a little 3D, and then he just kept going, "Return the Slab." Yeah, you gotta go look him up because he's terrifying. And I never watched Courage after I saw that episode. Genuinely.
I think I do know the one you're talking about. I did want to say really quick, for if anyone's not aware, I knew I recognized this name. The person who just rated us, UACNJ, is actually an astronomy club that has started streaming here on Twitch. So I know we have a lot of education fans here in the chat. So if you guys are looking for more education folks to go follow, please do go follow. Sorry to insert. I know you're doing a YouTube as well, but just a little plug.
No, that's fine.
I forget what the acronyms stand for. I just remember it's New Jersey at the end, but it's an astronomy club. So yeah, go check them out if you guys are into space. I saw Nerduino in here too earlier, and a few other people like each of the 2i. There's, for those who are new,
not a professor's
to this side
here
of Twitch,
too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like so many cool education streams, and I love doing co-streams like this. I just did one with Shane McInnes, who's another education streamer. Like, I just feel like there's so much opportunity to like connect the communities and like grow the space. So yeah, thanks again for having both of us on our respective community streams, and thanks for putting this together. Melissa, I'm having a blast. I love chatting about stuff like this. I think I saw another question in the chat, but I totally missed it.
Yeah, feel free if anybody has any questions either about art history and anything. If you guys are in my chat, you can always do the channel point redemption, so that the lecture question channel point redemption, so that you can see everything.
See, that's what a real pro looks like, guys. It's somebody who sets things. I don't know what I'm doing on Twitch. I'm just here.
It's okay. I forget to turn it off, and then my next stream, everyone redeems it to be mean to me. So it's the easiest way. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, that's a very great question, Fonty. And I'll pose it to you first because my answer is kind of easy, but I can do alternatives for ancient Egypt. But do you have a favorite historical art style, favorite artist? What type of art do you like?
Okay, so I have a very unfortunate kind of gap in my knowledge when it comes to like a complete knowledge of art history, despite having been an art teacher, and I actually did coach the art UIL team when I was teaching, so like you have to do a lot of art history there. So I've always, even as a kid, like I've always been more interested in the more contemporary representational art, probably because of my bias toward animation and illustration. Like, I love storybook illustration.
Oh,
so if you count storybook illustration, then I can definitely name some names. If we're talking like classical art periods and like art, like, you know, like the old Renaissance artists.
It can be any period. I'm not going to say you can do modern periods as well.
Well, I'm going to try and do someone more historical, but I don't know names specifically is what I'm trying to say for some of these. But there's like a ton of really incredible painters actually coming out of Russia over the last like there was like this crazy Renaissance movement. I have all these prints in my files of these like amazing basically like Russian Renaissance painters, but I couldn't tell you names off the top of my head, but they do some gorgeous work. If I had to pick like an English or a Western movement, I would say Art Nouveau really interested me when I was younger. I loved how stylized everything was. I'm actually a really big Mucha fan. I didn't know he pronounced it Mucha until I was much older, and I was corrected
I went to an exhibit and I did not know it. I went to an exhibit recently and I was like, oh, okay, thank you for telling me
Mucha.
this.
I said Mucha my whole life. Yep.
That's
I think
okay.
we all probably did here in the US.
Fine.
No, I was actually backpacking through Europe, and we were stopping in the Czech Republic, and I was talking about some art with people, and I was corrected on two names. one of whom I do have a Muha book next to this artist book right here on my table. For anyone who doesn't know, do you mind if I grab a prop? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, grab a prop. I've already grabbed props.
I mean, probably everybody knows this artist, but this is let me make sure it's work safe. Yeah, this is Muha's work.
Yeah.
Alphonse Muha, famous for a lot of these like pinup style images, but also did these incredible murals that I didn't know existed until I went to Prague. I was on a backpacking trip and I missed the opportunity to see the exhibit because it was kind of expensive and I was broke. I was fresh out of college. And I was like, oh, I better not. And I really regret it. I really regret not just going in.
Museums should be free, everyone.
But I should have, you only live once, and like, when am I ever going to be there again? So I really should have just taken the opportunity. So I do want to say, I was trying to see if they had murals in here. I don't see any. But if you're ever in that position, folks, and you're traveling, just do it. Even if you have to, like, buy lentils and rice for a few weeks when you get back. Find a way to make it work in your budget, because I really do wish that I had gone into that exhibit. I would say Muha would be one, and then also there's this illustrator called Reen Portfleet. I don't know if you're familiar with Reen Portfleet, or if anybody, maybe some folks in my community might be familiar with Reen Portfleet, but this book right here, I don't know if you guys heard that, is actually the reason I wanted to be an illustrator, is this book right here. My parents got me this Noah's Ark book because they knew I liked animals. And cool. Reen Portfleet is basically a naturalist painter who just does these, like, absolutely, it's huge. It's like a giant coffee table book. But just like the whole book is just this. Wow. It's just beautiful, beautiful, naturalistic, like, sketches and paintings of animals in, like, various environments. Kind of a little bit of speculative stuff, of course, about, like, Noah's Ark. There's some really good, like, drafting stuff of, like, how would this have fit, I'm not going to go into all that here, but there was one page in particular I was going to try and show you where he talks about, like, how we're so used to how weird animals look. Like, we would look at a giraffe and be like, oh yeah, that's just a giraffe. But if you had never seen a giraffe, like, what a weird animal. And so, like, just this whole idea, he basically does this, like, little impromptu, almost creature design kind of, like, exercise here, where he's like, what if we took this animal, kind of like you were talking about earlier about how humans are capable of mixing animals and making things up, and he just kind of goes through that. He's like, what if we put elephant ears on a cow, or like this or that? And, like, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, like, reading this book and seeing those pages just made me be like, yeah, why don't we put elephant ears on cows? And, like, I didn't know you could make a book that was literally just, like, sketches and artwork the whole way through. It's like a field notebook, basically, with just, like, observations of nature. And I was like, it was, like, my favorite. I looked at it all the time as a kid. So yeah, I would say probably Reen Portfleet is one of my favorite illustrators, just because he's kind of the reason I even decided I wanted to try illustration, as, like, I thought that would be such a cool career to just get to, like, do this.
Is he still alive, or what time period is he sort of?
So I think he was more in, like, I think he died in the 90s. So he's he's definitely more modern. Like, he's more of a contemporary illustrator for sure. He would have been, I think, kind of contemporary with, like, why is his name slipping my mind? Americana artist, very, very famous, starts with an R, or has an R in it. Did all the Saturday Morning Post. Is that why can I not think of the Saturday Morning Post?
The thanks, Norman Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell. Okay,
the Thanksgiving dinner. Yes.
Dr. Seuss is a good clip. Good job, Fonty. You got it. Yeah. Points to Fonty. I don't know why my brain farted there.
I can't remember names.
He would have lived around the same time.
Ever.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. But he and Norman Rockwell, I think, were actually kind of contemporaries. I think they were aware of each other's work, and they, like, anyway. But yeah, I think he I don't remember. He was born in 1932, according to the book jacket.
Yeah. So yeah, around that time for sure.
Yeah. But anyway.
Besides Egypt, although I will give my answer for within Egypt, because there are different styles as time goes on. My favorite type of art in ancient Egypt is the Amarna period art, and all my followers know how much I love Amarna period. But it is for those who don't know what it is, it's a very short time period. It's about probably around 20 years, and it is all based around Tutankhamun's father, a guy originally called Amenhotep IV, and then changes his name to Akhenaten. And essentially, he changes everything about life in Egypt as he knows it. So he builds a whole brand new capital. He moves everybody out to the middle of the desert where nobody had ever settled before. He decides to take one god and elevate it above the rest. So they sort of abandon polytheism. There are still worship of other gods, so it's more, we describe it as henotheism, so worshiping that one god above all the others. And he changes the art style drastically. And a lot of his decisions in changing the art style is talking about this god who is just a sun disk. He is never depicted as a human. He's never depicted as an animal. It is just a disk with hands that are coming down, with rays coming down with tiny little hands at the end. And the Aten, as it's called, is everywhere. It sees everything. It touches everything. It's also genderless in this way. And so he depicts he depicts men, especially himself, with both feminine and male attributes. And the reason I love it so much is because it is just so wildly different from ancient Egyptian art. It follows a lot of the same conventions, but there are just every so often, when especially people, it just looks completely different. And a lot of people have described it as realistic art. And most people have kind of gone the route of like, what medical condition did Akhenaten have, in which he had these really large breasts and this large low-hanging belly and these very almond sharp shaped eyes, big lips, big chin, very curvy, voluptuous, both men and women. And I do personally think that there's a smidgen of truth in that he does, I think, look a little bit like that. That's just a personal thing with me because I've obsessed about this time period for so long. But what it actually is idealism, just different idealism.
Yeah.
Because idealism is just your ideal, or the person who is believing in your ideal, and the pharaoh is the person who is dictating the art of the time. And so that is like, it is just a different type of idealism. I think it does bridge a little towards realistic, but more realistic than actual ancient Egyptian art, but it's not realism for sure.
Not supposed to be taken literally.
No. But besides Egyptian art, I am like as far from like a modern artist lover. I love Impressionism. Is pretty much like the big one that I will look at any Impressionist. Renoir is one of my absolute favorites. Degas, Monet, Manet, all of those Impressionists. I just recently went up to Philadelphia and I saw the Barnes Foundation, which has an insane collection of Renoirs, and I was just like, oh my god, there's so many Renoirs. I've never seen so many in my life. Luncheon at the Boating Party is one of my absolute, by far, favorite paintings, and I could look at it for literally ever. But I really like, there's lots of tiny time periods. Like, I'm not gonna say necessarily like this art, but I know a stupid amount about it because I had to take a class on it in undergraduate. Northern Renaissance art, so not Italian Renaissance art. I could not tell you a single thing about Caravaggio. I really can't tell you anything about Da Vinci or any of those dudes. Like, I do not know anything of that time period. I could talk about Van Eyck. I could talk about the weird babies that have the really tall foreheads and the squinty eyes. I know way too much about that period. It is not my favorite period. I just was forced to take a class because it was the last possible class option.
They do some really great cat drawings.
Yes, they
really
do.
Great horse drawings from the front, especially.
Yeah.
Horses are hard to draw.
They are hard to draw. Yeah. But yeah, I'm mostly kind of in that impressionistic era. There's some contemporary art that have been really cool, and I do like a lot of like the more animated, the animation type art, and I'm not into the modern art that I can't understand what it's supposed to mean. It can go over my head so quickly, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, it's like if I get it, I'm like, cool, I like this painting. But if I don't get it, I'm like, or any sculptures, I'm like, okay, what am I looking at here? And I feel very bad. I want to get into that artist vibe, but it's very hard for me to do that.
There's two very different brains in art. I feel like there's the representational art side of that coin, and then there's the abstract or the non-representational and the conceptual side of that art brain. And I can understand why people value. I don't want to devalue abstract art. I do feel like it is less accessible for sure. It's usually very, very heady and conceptual. It's the same type of response that people had like when Impressionism came out. Everybody hated it because everybody was like, "Oh, this isn't really art. This is just scribble." Because up to that point, all art had been highly technical. But then the photograph was invented, and all of a sudden, you could represent art perfectly accurate to reality. Like you could represent reality. The whole purpose of artists up to that point, for many of them, the way they made their living was painting portraits so that people could have family portraits. Like that was literally the purpose of artists. And so when the camera came, it kind of like stole all of that. And so artists kind of just like had to find a totally different way to think about art making. Like what is it? What does it mean to be creative? And like what does that word imply? And how do we represent that in humans? And I like Impressionism a lot. It's definitely one of my more favorite of the classical periods. But I feel like with modern contemporary art, it's such a response to modernization. It's a response to the Industrial Revolution. It's a response to like it's like the next thing after the photograph, right? So like I also don't personally do I don't spend a lot of time looking at abstract art. I understand the concepts and I understand how it can be interesting, but to me it's more of philosophy. Like if you are interested in philosophy, you're probably more likely to be interested in abstract and conceptual art because that's really it's become almost like, have you heard people talk about how physics has gone so far that it's actually stopped being math and it's becoming philosophy? I feel that way about art.
I have not heard that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and
like
I also
all the quantum physics stuff and the abstract stuff. Like at some point we've gone from the tangible to the conceptual, and that's kind of what the journey art has been on as far as like the fine art scene. So there's also fine art and then there's commercial art. So there's like all these different branches, and most people interact with commercial art or industry arts as we call them sometimes. And so it makes sense that most of the general public doesn't really like modern or fine art or gallery art. And I think that's okay. Like I'm not going to try to convince anybody to think otherwise. I will say that one of the things that I was told to me when I was first kind of learning about the history of modern art, and I was kind of like, oh, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to learn about this. I don't care that a guy put a toilet in a gallery. Like, you know.
Oh, the golden toilet. Yeah. I remember
or like painted a canvas all white. Like, I just, I wasn't really interested because that wasn't what interested me about art. I was more interested in the technical. But I will say somebody phrased it to me once as like this: when it comes to appreciating modern art or conceptual art, a common thing that you hear is like, well, my 2-year-old could have done that, or I could have done that.
Yep.
And the response to that is, but you didn't. And so just thinking about that and like what that actually means, it's not just like a pithy thing to say. If you really break it down, like what does that mean? Okay, but you didn't. Like, because yes, you could have done that, but there would have been no intention behind you putting paint on this canvas. You would be doing what many people grift and try to do, and they're just like, oh, look, I scribbled and threw up on this. Here, it's art. That's the same kind of thinking that leads to that. But like if somebody is, and I always use Picasso as an example and Pollock as an example, because both of them were actually great draftsmen. They could make traditional, representational, highly detailed artwork. They chose to represent things in a different way for a very specific purpose. Now, whether it makes sense to you or not is fine. That's where the conceptual side of that art comes in. But just having it phrased to me that way, it helped me to at least like consider fine art and specifically like more modern or conceptual art in a different way, in a historical context, thinking about it as a response to modernization in this way that we can, especially, I mean, I feel like we're seeing it right now too with like in the art field with like what is creativity all over again. We're having this what is art conversation because computers can quote unquote make art now, which like I'm not going to get into that because you want to make this like a 3-hour conversation. We can talk about that, but I wouldn't recommend it. But like what is art basically is always the question with art. And I don't know, just like framing it in a historical context and at least finding interest in like the cycles of, a thing happens with technology, how do artists respond? I think is a cycle that you see throughout history, and that can be interesting. That can be something that you can appreciate about modern art, even if you don't like the art itself. Thinking about what is it responding to, I think is a way to approach it, and just considering like, I could have, but I didn't. I think that that's enough to say. I think, at least for me.
I love that. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I love what you said about philosophy because I don't like philosophy. I don't get it. It is one of those things that like, God bless. I I had a friend of a friend who was studying to be it was a philosophy major, and we stayed with him for a weekend when we were in Dublin, and he was so kind to us. He was so lovely, but anything I just said, he wanted to like posit it, and I'm like, no, the conversation's over. I don't know what to respond. I don't know why we need to respond. And
Right.
I've told this to my friends. I in college thought I was going to decided to take a Harry Potter and philosophy course because I liked Harry Potter, and I thought it would be a fun course to take with a friend of mine who was a religion major, and we had never crossed paths class wise. I left after I dropped it after the first day because
Oh no.
they were not talking about Harry Potter, and they started, some girl like in the back said, "Oh, professor, is that what the blah 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 theory was, whatever this theory was?" And he goes, "Oh yeah," and he like turns onto the board, he starts drawing symbols, like straight up symbols. I'm like, what is going on? I was like, I don't understand what is going on at all. And I was like, I'm gonna drop this and I'm gonna go take Islamic art and archaeology, thank you very much. And I felt very bad, but it's one of those, theory is very, very hard. I am very much a concrete, need images, need sort of those things to kind of move forward. And so I think that makes like a lot of sense, and it definitely reflects in the art that I like. One of the other, and this is not a general style of art or section of historical art, but another one of my favorite types of art is people painting the world around them, and typically what I've always described it is ruins paintings. I love looking at people painting the things that they see around them or the things that they've been told, especially when it comes to Egypt. And so I will sometimes go through more contemporary painting sections and be like, oh, is that, I wonder what temple that is, or I wonder if what that's supposed to be. And there's some really interesting, because it is in its own sense is a historical record of what it looked like at the time that that person painted it, as long as we can assume that they are painting it with some sort of realism. And that is always difficult, but we do then actually get to a super interesting time period within the world of Egyptology, which is in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Even though photography has already been invented, it is not accessible to everybody. And it was a requirement of larger Egyptology excavation groups to hire an artist to go with you onto site. And that artist's job was to paint exactly what they saw before them. And so they would paint a section. Obviously, I have some imagery of it in the back, but the tomb wall paintings are amazing because they will show where the paint is missing. They will show where a piece has fallen off the wall. They will show bat guano. They will show beehives. It will show that super, super realistic portion. And a lot of the very most famous Egyptologists started off as artists. Howard Carter, who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb, he was an artist for Flinders Petrie, and continued, actually, when he lost his job because he had an argument with somebody. He sold paintings on the side of a road, essentially, in Luxor for years. And a lot of museums still have these paintings, and not all of them are ever on display. The Met in New York is one of the greatest examples because there's this room within the Egyptian collection. Technically, it's where the bathrooms are, but the entire ceiling, all floor to ceiling, are these replica. We call them facsimile paintings for the most part. And I know the MFA in Boston hired a lot of facsimile artists as well. And so they don't come about a lot because for the most part we have pictures now, but they are this amazing tool that Egyptologists used to be able to tell, okay, I'm coming back 3 seasons later, let's see how the tomb looks, and see how it has been treated over that time, and a nice snapshot of what it used to look like.
That's so interesting. You remind me that I do know, I don't know if people are familiar with this field. The military for a long time, and I think maybe even still today, actually hires artists, or has combatants that are actually field artists. That was their job. I've actually known 2 battlefield artists in the Marines. Literally their job was to go out and draw the battle to like depict what they're seeing, to have like this
That is
this
wild.
human record that goes beyond just photography, which I find so interesting to see that in like a military space.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Not
like
what I would
there'll be
expect.
people who, yeah, there'll be people who I think there's a few on Twitch that stream that used to do
Wow.
that as their career. And I've had a chance to talk with a couple of them about their experiences, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Knights, yep, they still need naturalists in the modern
Yeah.
military. It's so interesting because like you can take a photo, but there's something about like the way an artist, and it's different with what you're sounding like. What you're describing does sound like a more photorealistic
Yeah.
depiction of like what they're physically seeing, so they can track changes. But like with things like that, like the night skies, like a skeptic says, like a naturalistic viewpoint, and there's something about the way an artist emphasizes line or emphasizes shadow or emphasizes things that can capture more than a photo, because it captures the mood, the feeling
Yeah.
of being in that place, that like roughness or the rawness. And I
Yeah.
just thought that was, when I found out that that was a job, I was like, wow. Like,
That is amazing.
that's the
Yeah.
last place I would have expected to find an artist, and especially to find a paid artist, like a regularly employed artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would be the military on a battlefield, at least for the U.S. military. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. There's still field artists, and it's funny that you say like a lot of Egyptologists were artists, because I find that that's true for a lot of historic scientists as well. Like,
Yes.
I think it really does come down to like what art really is training your observation eye. It's developing the
Yes.
ability to see is a way I've heard it put before, and you need that to do any kind of study of any field, right? And so I always like to say that like if you ever meet like say a scientist who studies some kind of physical thing, like if you're like a quantum physicist, maybe this wouldn't work, but like if you're a geologist or an anthropologist or an entomologist or something, and I were to ask you like, hey, like I bet I could ask you, could you please draw me, you know, this god, and you could probably, I mean, it may not be technically accurate, but
Yeah.
you have studied it to the point that you would be able to like do a pretty good like accurate, like here's all the parts, here's where they go, here's the colors. Like you would do a good job of that because you have spent so much time studying that specifically. Or like if I were to ask Belent, you know, at Science Streams to be like, draw a fruit fly, I bet he could draw a really good fruit fly.
God, yeah. I mean,
because he spent so much time looking at them.
I'm also jealous of his artistic technique. I've been like, I probably could draw like my own emotes and do like cute things like that, but I have yet to delve into digital art, and so I can sort of figure out how I would do it like drawing wise and I'd be fine, but I would really like to like figure out how I can delve into digital art, and I just like have not had the time genuinely to like think about it. And time is, everybody on my chat knows time is definitely the issue because I do too many things.
It's hard not to say yes to everything. It's something I struggle with as well.
It's genuinely
but then
impossible.
it's also, I think it's part of that is that curiosity that's kind of innate in our fields, right? It's like you have to want to learn more. Like to be a good artist, to be a good historian, to be a good scientist, you have to learn how to observe, and you have to learn how to ask questions, and you have to be curious. And so like I think it tends to attract curious, enthusiastic people because you need those skills to be able to actually apply yourself in this field at least well. I'm sure there's people out there who are just, you know, calling it in, and they're kind of like should have retired 20 years ago, but like, you know, for the like we all know, but like for the most part though, I think when you're at your height anyway in those fields, when you're really genuine about it, like those are the best people in almost any field, frankly, but especially in the studious fields, I suppose. And I would definitely put art in that field as well. And I think that is why a lot of people become artists, or maybe start as artists and become, that's a big thing in my field. Somebody asked me this the other day, like, what's the crossover like between like art and science, or art and even like conservation, because I've been getting more into conservation, like you mentioned the Vaquita event, and I've really wanted to lean more into that. But it's actually a very common career track. The more I've talked to people, I know a ton of artists that are now field biologists or zoologists or like doing work like with animals or with nature. Even people who are like forest rangers now that were like artists for the first half of their lives, because they got so into the studious part of like what they were drawing that they just like, I want to learn more. So they went to school and got a degree, and probably a more stable job too. Doesn't hurt because art is notoriously, unstable. But shout out to anybody who supports artists out there, whether you follow or lurk on their streams or whatever. But But yeah, no, I know there's like a ton of artists who go
That's
that
so
way.
awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I've actually, ironically, know quite a few people who have sort of done the opposite, but like obviously still keep with history. But I know quite a few people who have gone into history, have studied history, and have found ways to do it with art in a lot of ways. So there's some amazing artists who like I'm blanking on her name now, but she does genuinely beautiful pictures. She's mostly into like classical Greek and Roman depictions, but she has been illustrating books lately, and she's been illustrating like history books and does these amazing images of Romans and Greeks in a super cool art style. And I've also known there's quite a few archaeologists who have made archaeology t-shirts and archaeology stickers, and
that's true.
Getting into sort of a little bit of the meme culture, but that is totally fine because again, we're all nerds. We all love this stuff.
I was gonna say, it's a bunch of nerds. Like, what do you expect? Of course they've spent too much time online. Like, how else are we gonna learn all this stuff?
Exactly. And then I also know of quite a few people who have done like archaeology jewelry, and are making imagery of Egyptian gods and goddesses and hieroglyphs and lots of really cool things. And last year we did a lecture with a friend of mine who was an archaeologist for very many years in Eastern Europe, and essentially kind of got sick of the toxic nature of the field that she was in that area, and started essentially a mentorship group of trying to find alternative fields with archaeology, and how you can take your archaeology and your history knowledge and apply it to different fields. And so it was a really fascinating talk we had with her, because similar to art, archaeology is one of those things that you can have all the passion in the world for it. That does not mean it's going to bring up jobs. And any sort of financial security. And I love my job that I have, but my real life job, like, it pays well for a museum educator, which are usually part-time positions. And I am a full-time, work for a city, have a pension, have all of these beautiful, lovely things.
Yeah, congrats.
And I'm still struggling a lot. Like, we joke about this all the time. MelissainDeNile, we're doing great right now because we separate finance and everything. Melissa... We're doing okay. We're surviving.
There you go.
And that is, the unfortunate thing is that I get so many people who have either come up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, when I was a kid, I would have loved to be an archaeologist. I would have loved to be an Egyptologist." And I'm like, I always say, like, "Well, why? What happened? Why didn't you?" And people say, "Oh, my parents deterred me, or it was financially a silly decision," and da da da. And then I get the young people who are like, "I'm planning to become an Egyptologist. What is our field like? How accessible are jobs?" And I'm just like, clench. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to tell you that it is," as we unfortunately joke in the Egyptology and I think some larger archaeology communities, in a lot of cases we're waiting for people to die, because the profession is oversaturated and not enough jobs, and you're waiting for the old guy who's been at that job for 20 years even 40 years, because he loves it. That is the way about it. And there are absolutely other accessible ways to go into the field, but I always precursor with it is you need to have the passion for it, and you also need to accept that this is not a job that's going to make you money. I accepted that very early on. I'm mad about it, but I did accept it. My dad once told me, and he has no memory of this conversation, but this was a very pivotal moment of my life, where I asked him if he liked his job, and he said no. And I said, "Well, why do you do it?" And he said, "Because I have 3 kids I have to put through college." And I was like, that's an unacceptable answer in my head. And it's an unfortunate thing that I'm like, well, I will not accept that, and I will not go to a job that I just do for money. And until you get to that realization, then you can't, I really don't recommend going forward in any sort of field, because you can be an amateur Egyptologist, you can be an amateur researcher. That does not mean that you have to stop studying it. There are plenty of people who have published things as amateurs, or just, it is their hobby. There's no shame of that at all. And you have ways to interact with it in our media today. You can read more books, you can go to streams, there are these people that exist there that will allow you to continue your passion even if you're not going to do it financially.
Yeah. It is a hard conversation to have, but it is important. People do need to realize, because it is easy to get swept up in the romanticism of like being an archaeologist or being a paleontologist or being an artist or being any of these things. I think that's one of the things that like kind of shocked me that I learned here on Twitch, actually, watching about a lot of educational streamers, especially like science streamers and people who are in the like fields like yours. It really is kind of like art in a lot of ways, because it seems to be like a passion pursuit. Frankly, it's not something that's well funded. It's not something that there's no job opportunities, really. Like you said, you have to kind of wait for people to pass on or leave the job, and then everybody and their parents are like scrambling for that one position from all over the country. And it's competitive. And I do think that in some ways, if you are ambitious enough and have time, I think that does open an opportunity for more science communication. Like, you can carve out a niche where you can like do something like what you're doing, like streaming and sharing that, and like opens up the opportunity for more awareness and, you know, maybe some extra tips to come in with the day job. Like, you know, it's not to say that it's necessarily going to, but I do hope that people who are passionate and want to share the information anyway are going to do the thing and maybe do a good job sharing it, whereas people who are just interested but maybe not willing to commit so much of their life to doing that. I mean, and there's no shame in that either, too. No. Like, I will admit that I am in a position where, because I don't have dependents, you know, because I was able to, I was a teacher for 5 years. I paid off all my student debts. You know, I did all those things first, and then I took this plunge. And not everybody's in that position. No. You know, not everybody's able to go and get a 4-year degree and go do something to pay off their loans and like have that fallback plan. And like, on the one hand, I don't know, sometimes I do wonder like what would have happened had I gone into this field right out of high school, like so many of my friends did. Like, where would I be? You know, like maybe if I was capable of this now, like would I have been able to start this earlier and be so much further along? But you just don't know. And I chose a safer route for that financial security, because I was aware of the risks and I wasn't willing to like just jump into them without some kind of a fallback. But like, as long as people know. And, then, and like you said, maybe you accepted the risks when you were younger, but now you're kind of like living the reality of what that looks like as an adult. You know,
the reality sucks. It's so bad.
You know, that's just part of, you know, we all think we understand what we're getting into when we're younger. And maybe some people do, but like until you're actually living it, it's not, the reality of the day-to-day doesn't really hit you. Because the financial part is hard, you know, like it's not easy. Pursuing your passions, but like, I like to think, and I'm sure you feel the same way, I like to think that what I'm doing and what you're doing, what people who are putting things like this out there in the world are doing, has value, and that's going to live beyond, you know, us, and that there is, that it's worth, for me anyway, it's worth the sacrifice, I think. Because it's like, if I can get somebody interested in art or animals or bettering themselves or being more curious, I mean, maybe that's the teacher in me, but I really think that's the biggest thing, is like, if you can encourage just one person to ask more questions. I have this like little mantra that I kind of live by, and I watched Ted Lasso recently, and I was like, hey, they stole my mantra, because they said it way better than me. But I've always, and for those who've seen Ted Lasso, you'll know what I mean, but like, for my thing, I've always said for years, just based on observation of like the people I enjoy and how people treat each other, is like, I want to be a person who asks more questions than I make statements, and I enjoy being around people who ask more questions than they make statements. And Ted Lasso just puts it as be curious, not judgmental. I'm like, fine, be all concise about it, fine. But like, you know, the heart of that same idea is there. And I think the more people you can encourage, no matter what walk of life they come from or what perspective they have, just to be more curious. I think that's a net positive for society. You know, I think that there's no possible reality in which that is harmful. To just encourage curiosity, you know.
Absolutely.
Like, there's so many worse things we could be putting into the world than making somebody curious about ancient Egypt and why that, what is Set? Like, is it a dog? Is it an anteater? Like, even just debating that and looking into it for 5 minutes, like, you were curious for those 5 minutes, you know, and somebody else might now be going down a rabbit hole of something they never expected to be interested in. And that's, to me, that's what makes life beautiful.
We love doing that on this channel and on my TikTok as well. And there are so many so many of my TikToks, a whole series essentially is just asking Egyptologists. And so we cover the easy questions. We cover the ones that everybody tries to ask. And then there's that one random question that is like, wait a second. And kind of going back to our funny about like, if ancient Egyptians didn't depict themselves going to the bathroom, it means it didn't exist, right? And somebody had, I think I said that maybe in a video, and somebody replied and they're like, well, that's ridiculous. It just like, if they don't know the word for poop, then it doesn't exist. And I'm like, and I suddenly sat there and I was like, oh no, it was if they don't have a word for fart, then I don't want to live in that world that they live in. And I was like, wait a second, the ancient Egyptians definitely have a word for fart. And then I went on a 3-day research where I had to translate so much German, because I was the only, because God love the Germans, they are the only people who, they were the biggest linguists within Egyptology. And so it just was like, genuinely everything is written in German, and not just in German, in handwritten German.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I was translating a ton looking for farts, and we did a stream about it too. Yeah, I literally was like, guys, we gotta do this. I gotta show you what this word is. It's the word for wind. It's the word for wind in a sail. And if it's used in a medical text, it means fart. And I'm like, okay,
hilarious.
Great. But it's those little moments are always just so great. And some of them are usually really profane, but they're really funny at the same time. And welcome on in, Raiders. Welcome in, Ludo History, fellow education streamer. Welcome on in, everybody. We are doing our Beyond Denial guest lecture series with Casey Snow Art, who is an artist, freelance artist, and also savior of the vaquita porpoise. And I like using the word savior because I think it is just.
It's so much pomp. I don't know if I can live up to that. Like, I just want people to know about him, you know?
I love it. But welcome on in, Ludo. Ludo also plays history content. And we did a lecture with Ludo last year, 2 years ago, all about video games that have like information corpuses, like they have like a encyclopedia and stuff, and Ludo did a whole deep dive on which ones are bad and which ones are good, and it's amazing. If you want to go check it out, it's all on my YouTube. It was a really, really great lecture we had last year. But I'm so glad you're here. We are probably going to wrap up semi soon, just because both of us have had some long days, as I described.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize the time.
I know. As I said to y'all, I was on a 9-hour outreach outside in which it was both cold and cloudy. Then it started raining for no apparent reason, and then all the clouds went away and it was really hot. And so we're both tired. But yes, thank you, Ludo. One thing I want to briefly talk about is how did you start Twitch streaming and started kind of adding that into everything? And especially I want to know, how has Twitch streaming changed the way you teach? And that is coming from, obviously, you are a fine art teacher. You said elementary school, right? So like you're teaching a lot of different things. How has that changed now that you're teaching virtually and a much wider community, not children? So kind of what are those two, your backstory there?
Oh man, okay, I'll try to keep it brief because it's kind of a crazy. So, okay, I started Twitch streaming. A lot of people don't know this, but I technically started streaming on Twitch in like 2017.
Wow. I
had a friend who was a gamer, or still is, and told me about Twitch and was like, hey, you should stream art on this platform. And I was like, isn't that just for games? And she's like, no. Like, there's a creative category. It's back when it wasn't called art. It was the creative category. And so I was a creative streamer for a while. But I was too afraid to interact with anybody. Art is this very, like, critical field, right? Like, we're constantly self-critiquing and being asked to critique others and looking to get critiqued, and like it's very easy, I think, to internalize that. And I think a lot of artists struggle with this, and probably more than just artists. But for me, getting on Twitch was like, I was terrified to be seen, but at the same time there's like this tension, because you also need your work to be seen, to be found, so you can get work.
Yes.
And so I had started streaming like right when I left teaching and decided I was gonna like come out here and be an illustrator. And I was too afraid to engage. I've got this like built-in, I'm still kind of working through it in some ways, but just kind of like this innate fear of the internet, I guess. And like having grown up kind of watching a lot of online drama with friend groups and art groups and like niche groups, even just like fandom dramas, like it just
Mm-hmm.
really turns you off of like being known, because I just saw so many people kind of get like, I don't know, and some of that has to do with maturity, right, of like the
Mm-hmm.
ages we all were at the time, but like I just had this fear of like of being, not only being known and being like canceled basically
Yeah.
for whatever reason, or like, you know, being thrown into a flame war, if we can still call them flame wars,
Yeah.
but also just like not being good enough, like being seen, being judged, and being found lacking basically was my
Yeah.
fear. And I think a lot of artists feel this way, especially with social media, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. Like my idea was like, I'll stream and like whoever finds me finds me, but I'm not going to go like in anyone else's chats or like
Mm-hmm.
get involved with the community, because then they might see me and they might realize like I'm bad. You
Yeah.
know, and I want to get good first, and then I'll engage. And
Yeah.
I will just say to anybody out there who is in any kind of creative field, I guess, whether it's art, music, anything, and this probably applies to a lot of people too. Like if you wait until you feel like you're ready, you're never going to be ready, is something that I've had to grapple with. And it's one thing to know that intellectually, because like I was aware
Yeah.
of that saying, you know, but it's hard to like feel it and push through and do it anyway. Do it scared is something that you hear said a lot these
Mm-hmm.
days, which I love that phrase. I try to say that to myself a lot. But yeah, so how I started streaming versus like when I actually started streaming, I feel like technically I was on Twitch, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a schedule and I wasn't consistent, and I kind of went off and on. And anyway, I stopped streaming for a number of years, and then in 2024,
Mm.
I decided I needed to either like really make a push to get my work out there and like become something, or I needed to go back to teaching or go back to some other job, because you know I've been at it for a while, and it's just not, you know, we just talked about this, it's not a super sustainable long-term
we
field, and like I need
we
to
love it,
pay
but
for
it's not. Yeah.
like I need to pay for my life. And so I was like, all right, 2024 year, we're gonna see if I can make something happen. If not, I'm gonna wipe my hands of this. And 2024, I got more involved, and that's kind of how I kind of got on this path. I'm not gonna go into the whole thing, but it turned into like me meeting a ton of like science and education people, not just art
Mm-hmm.
people. I started meeting other artists and making friends for the first time with other artists online, because I didn't know anybody really before 2024. I was just nobody, because I was so afraid. And it turned into like last year. Now I'm partnered as of last year, because this year I
Yeah.
got to go to TwitchCon, and I've had so many opportunities just because of meeting people on Twitch. Like it's been absolutely, I don't want to sound dramatic, but it's been like life changing and like definitely
No.
trajectory changing. Like I never thought streaming was not, I didn't like sit down one day to be like, I'm going to be an art streamer and I'm going to do all these things and I want to go
Yeah.
to TwitchCon. Like I just kind of feel, I keep stumbling into things,
Yeah.
and I'm just like trying to ride that for as long as I can. And I'm so grateful that people are interested in being along for that journey. But how has it impacted my teaching? Well, I will say this: teaching elementary school kids, K through 12, really good practice for Twitch chat. And I
Yeah.
tease them about this all the time too. Like, you learn how to ignore the troll. You learn,
Yep.
because you have to do that in the classroom. You have to ignore the
Yeah.
kid that's just like beating their head against a wall and screaming for no reason. Like, you just have to get everybody like,
Yeah.
focused. That is how I think of trolls, by the way. If anyone out there thinks they're being really cool and clever, like I think of you as the poopy pants kid that I just have to ignore for a few minutes. Just so you know, that's how we all see you. Maybe
Yeah.
you don't care, but but as far as like how it's affected it, I think the biggest thing for, and you probably feel this too, is like you have to kind of constantly revisit topics throughout the stream, because
Oh my
not
God.
everybody's there for the whole stream. And if you're
I
trying
know.
to address a topic, it's like, how do I do that in a way that still sounds engaging and doesn't exhaust me, and doesn't exhaust the people who've been here the whole time and heard me say the thing like 4 times, you know. And
Exactly.
there's ways around that, like commands in chat, you know, to help address things. But I would say that's probably the biggest change, is like being able to navigate just like the repetitiveness sometimes
Yes.
of like a long stream that's not just like, you know, it's different than a podcast or a YouTube video that you sit down and just consume. You know, it's the interactive nature. But I will say that interactive nature, I think, has allowed me to kind of play to maybe my strengths that I learned from elementary school, because again, Twitch chat is a lot like teaching kids, and there's little things that I like to, that you can do that work well with kids, that work well with adults. I've always said this, but you can really kind of apply them a little bit while you're streaming. Like a very simple one for an example is like, so like when you're working with kids, you've probably done this before too, since you probably work with all kinds of kids, but you know
Yeah.
how like when you have a bunch of 5-year-olds and they're getting really rowdy, and then you like act like you have a secret, you're like, come here, hey, come here, and then
Yeah.
they all get really quiet, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what And then like there's like things like that you can do, and like I've
Yeah.
literally whispered that before. And like
It's like,
I don't know, there's just
yeah.
little like pop-ups and things that are fun, but I in some ways I feel more like an elementary school teacher right now.
Yeah.
But the difference I guess is I get to teach higher level
Yeah.
concepts, right? Because a lot of the people who come to draw with me are like, it's everybody from like the very beginner to like industry people who come and do art gym with me in the morning, and I get to learn from them. So I like to say that I'm also a student. Like I'm not necessarily trying to teach on Twitch. It's just kind of happening. That learning is happening, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it absolutely does. Yeah. And it is so similar in so many ways to what I do. And if you did not know, the name MelissainDeNile comes straight from the imposter syndrome that I get in grad school. And all of that I constantly am like doubting myself, and in the sense that like I'm not gonna know everything, and a lot of it stems from I've grown up with a learning disability that affects my memory, which does not help with names of pharaohs or time periods or anything like that. And there are things that I know very, very well, and then we'll sit there and I'll be like, what is that called? And I just like my brain will completely just blank out. And so I have always very much since grad school, like have kind of come out of this just imposter syndrome that I will never be good enough. I will never be able to do what I want. And especially because, unfortunately, my decision to leave and not continue in academia, and that we were talking about this just this week, and that if I saw one of my professors from grad school, I would be unfortunately embarrassed, because I would assume that they would be embarrassed by what I do here. And it's a horrible thing that like I really would actually like to continue and go to an Egyptology conference, but I'm kind of terrified to actually see them potentially in person. There's no guarantee that they would be there, but if I saw one of my professors, I would completely turn into like a little child that is terrified of this man who tortured me like during my thesis. But it is MelissainDeNile like has made me more confident, and all of the comments that people give me and compliments about how my knowledge and the things that I learn and research for and put so much effort into, like those are the things that like definitely keep me going and keep reassuring me. But the repetitiveness in chat, we also live stream on TikTok, and we have been getting a trend where as soon as I go live, the TikTok chat goes crazy, and we get so many people who are just stumbling in and are asking all of the exact same questions and all of these things. And everybody else on Twitch, you guys lovingly say I ignore you, and I'm like, because you guys know all these things, because you're here all the time, like you are not asking the questions. I know, Mark, I know I ignore you. It's like I can't help it.
It's not ignoring,
and so,
she trusts you. See?
Yeah. And my favorite part is that I love when I see y'all either jumping into the TikTok chat, or even some of y'all like go to my Facebook, which like I barely do the comments on Facebook because that is the dark place. That is the dark place of weird comments. But I love when I see some of my Twitch followers going and answering a question that I don't have time to answer, because you guys retain so much. But we've literally joked about making a MelissainDeNile bingo card. Because of like everyone on Twitch is like, oh, okay, somebody asked about how the pyramids were built. Okay, somebody's asking about Cleopatra. Like, it's always the same old things. And I'm just like, I'm sick and tired of saying them over and over again. But I have been able to come up with like the most succinct way, luckily.
Yes. You get your elevator pitch down.
Yes, the elevator pitch. Like, everyone's like, how are the pyramids built? And I just go, ramps, human animal power, and maybe pulleys. That's it. Yeah. I can't say any more because it's just gonna take too long.
A common one. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about you, and I'm sure you feel this way too, but like I had that experience of like I was in somebody else's chat and somebody asked a question about the Vaquita. I think it was like after the Vaquita event, and one of my community members responded and answered to that question like in a way that I would have, or like from something that we had talked about on during that event. And I was just like, I think my teacher heart was just so I was just like, no, they know this. Like, I don't know, it's such a cool thing. Like,
It always makes me
we
happy.
talked about this the other day of like, I really think like anybody can be a teacher. All it really takes, if you have like one or two things, you have to have that curiosity, that why, and you have to have just like this unbridled desire to share why you think this thing is so cool with someone else. That's really what teaching is, I think, at its core, I think. And it's like that desire to see somebody else like understand why you think this is cool or why you think it's important, whatever the topic is. And it's like so gratifying to like see that play out. Like, I'm sure you watching your community members answer these questions like pros, it's just like, oh man, like, yes, like,
so
they
great.
get it, you know,
they get it. They're getting it, guys. They're understanding. And it's always so funny
too, because like you said, it keeps you from having to respond to the same question. Like, thank you on behalf of anyone who's listening to us right now. If you have helped answer a question from any streamer, especially an educational streamer, and you know the answer and you provide that answer, like, thank you. Because it's
absolutely
helpful, and it's cool to see it. It's very gratifying for us too. And if I can I, I'm sure I don't know, you probably don't have time to get into this whole thing, but I do want to like offer something to say with this like academic sneering that you hear about a lot with communication and outreach in various fields. I've become, I think, more intensely aware of it because I've been hanging out on so many education streams. But like, just thinking about like the idea of the ivory tower and people who, you know, I was talking to Shane about this, about like, what is the purpose of learning all these things so deeply, whether it's philosophy or art or history or science, and then never sharing that with literally anybody that it could impact in the world, and only sharing that with other people who already know those things. Like, I can understand the intellectual tag of like, oh, but what about this theory? But what about this theory? Like, that's fun. I get it. Like, I'm not trying to poo-poo that. That's a really fun part of academia. But like, if you keep all that knowledge to yourself and then you all die, where did it, what good did it actually do anybody? Like, I think we're seeing the fallout of this now, of like people not understanding enough about all of these different fields, you know, like whether it be science or math or physics, or like all these big topics, or history. Heck, like, I mean, how many times do you hear in your life like history is doomed to repeat itself if you don't learn it? Like, there's reasons these fields are important. And if you do end up going to a conference, you know, I hope that you're able to, if you do manage to find the courage to get up there and do a presentation about outreach on platforms like Twitch, I just want to encourage you to like lean into the importance of that. And you can literally point to the evidence of the lack of science communication and education and outreach in general in our society right now that we're all living through. And you can say like, this is why it's important. You know? Like, this is why it's important to do. Because it does matter. Like, conversations are how we change the world, and like encouraging curiosity and wonder is literally how you abate fear, you know, like you keep that away. Like, anyway, I get a little passionate about that because I hate to hear that there's people in the field that could ever not see the benefit of sharing their expertise with the world. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
There is, unfortunately, there's so much about that is so hard. And I feel like the unfortunate thing is that there is now become so many conspiracy theories that perpetuate the internet so much. And the biggest thing that I have noticed is that like people don't know how to research anymore. People don't know what a peer-reviewed source is, and they perpetuate and then continue to talk about this. And one of the biggest and honestly most mind-blowing things that's happened to me in the past couple of years was there was this article that came out about these spiral like passageways or ramps or something else underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it was technically an article. It was technically an article that came out, and it was perpetuated by, let's say, some TikTokers who talk about history even though they're not historians. And I hate telling that is a problem, because I want to perpetuate that you can be an amateur historian. You can be a good historian.
But you have to do it good.
You have to do it well.
Research.
Somebody who has her doctorate in pharmacology should not be talking about history unless you actually are being accurate. And what we looked into is that this article is written by known pseudo archaeologists, and literally one of them is like a known UFOologist from Italy. And it was published in a journal that doesn't have any peer reviews, and supposedly you can upload the paper, and within 24 hours it's on the internet. And they took real scientific data that is really difficult to understand. It's called synthetic aperture radar, or SAR. So it's not just GPR, or ground penetrating radar. It's not muons, which is another thing that's super complicated to understand. But they take this actual data that somebody took, that is all these numbers on all of these radar, like things that most, like 90% of the world are not going to understand, and then interpreted it wildly.
Oh gosh.
And
just speculated wildly, basically.
Yes, just went crazy. And one of the guys in the group has now continued and done a similar paper about the second Sphinx, which you may have seen coming around more recently. The second Sphinx has been a pseudo archaeology theory since the 90s. Like, he is just bringing this crap back. And the difficult part about this is that I made a video, and it wasn't about the actual article. It was about how do we determine what is a reputable scientific source. And I got a little frustrated in the video. I was a little bit more candid than I typically am. I didn't really script it or anything. Sure. The amount of people that not only were like, wow, you were just so rude and so dismissive about it, but the amount of people that were like, oh, I don't trust academics. Like, I just don't trust it. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with these people? Like, this is just a whole group of people on the internet that I'm like, I'm never going to be able to convince them of anything, because they see me as an academic. And even though I'm not in strictly senses, and just will automatically say, she's an academic, I don't believe her. And I'm like, well, then that is a thing that I did not expect. Like, I don't know what argument I can use to convince those people. And it was something so surprising to me.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. That's okay. I just wanted to say, like, I think that is the benefit of streaming, though. Like, I think that is the benefit of this conversation that you can have with somebody in a chat. Because if somebody's acting in good faith, obviously, some people are not. Yeah. Some people are they just want to stir the pot, and some people are literally bots. I think that the lack of awareness of how many bots are literally pushing so many of these conversations online is really stunning.
And AI and
we need to be more socially conscious and aware that is part of the problem, is that some of these inflammatory comments are rage bait bots. Like, they're not real people. So, like, even some of those comments on your videos, but it makes it hard to know. Like, it makes it hard to know, like, it's hard to gauge what public reception is like. But that's why I think, like, being able to literally show people and say like, hey, nobody paid me to do this research. Like, I did this because it's my passion. You know, I funded this data collection. I did all of this. Like, so many people just don't know that that's how papers are done. They think that there's like this big conglomerate. They think it's this big corporate thing. Like, big archaeology is somehow behind this. And it's like, who is that? Because it is so
funny that they think that we get paid a ton of money.
Lack of understanding of what the process looks like. And I think I have felt this. Like, I didn't know that that's how it worked until I got on Twitch and started hanging out on education streams. And I was like, oh, like, there's like a few people that might get some funding from a university, but the majority of papers are just completely self-funded by oftentimes like grad students or people
and
who are
often
just, like,
not paid to get published. They don't get any money to publish it.
To get published. That's the thing that blew my mind. And if you want to get into a reputable paper, you typically have to pay to do that. Like, that's the wildest thing I've ever heard. Until I started streaming here, I had no idea that that's how a majority of papers happen. And the funding that goes for like research is usually just to pay for the publishing of the paper, and then like maybe some extra like research tools or something if needed. But like, and the fact that so much of that funding has been pulled now, don't even get me started on that either. But like, I don't know. I think that is a benefit, and I think the more people, like, I've been able to tell people in my life who have this like innate mistrust of big science or big whatever, and be like, did you know that like this is how it actually works? And they're like, oh, I didn't know that, you know. And like, some people aren't going to be open to hearing that and are going to have that like idea anyway, but then some people are going to hear that and it's going to make them pause and reflect and reconsider, maybe I don't have all the pieces here. And not everybody's going to pursue that any further, but even just planting that seed, I think, of like, hey, hey, this is what this actually looks like pulling the curtain back of like, this is what it looks like to be an archaeologist, this is what it looks like to be a part of these like learning fields, you know. It's
Yeah.
maybe not what you think. Please ask me questions. Like, I just applaud that in general, because I think it really does help, even if you don't see that. So I don't know, at least it's helped me, and I know that I've been able to share things, and so I hope maybe even hearing that, and I'm sure there's people in your community that would tell you the same thing, you know.
Yes, we had a very long conversation about how I should publish a paper or attempt to do a presentation on something, and it has been a goal for me to at least publish one paper, and I have an idea based on my thesis, and I just don't have the time.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even just
yeah.
talking about that process, I think is helpful, is what I'm trying to say. Even if you don't physically do that on stream or walk us through that on stream, just like explaining what that looks like to people who don't have that view inside of your field. I think that has value.
I mean, I could work on it on stream, Otto. I guess I literally just thought about that in the moment when Casey said that. I was like, I guess I could. I mean, yeah, there's no harm or foul. No harm or foul.
I'm sure it'd be a hard thing for people to know how to make that interactive, though, right? Like,
yes,
you could always do it if you really wanted to. I wasn't really trying to like be like, you should do this on stream, but like, I mean, I don't like doing studies, and I make myself do that on stream. I've seen people do like productivity things where it's like you have 20 minutes to do like 20 minutes of this, and then that's it for the day. But at least you make progress.
Streams, we have done.
I don't know, it's tough, but I still think there's value in just what you're doing and what you're putting out there.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah, we have done. We did this actually so long ago, but I have a series that I'm doing on TikTok called Obelisk of Ancient Egypt, which has been the bane of my existence for like a year and a half, because there's just so many obelisks, and the videos are almost all entirely the same. And so I've been saying when that series ends, I'm going to start a new series, and one of the ones I've been wanting to talk about is medicine in ancient Egypt. And so we did a discussion stream where we started talking about it, and anything that people found interesting, I just made a list, and I'm like, these are going to be for future videos in the future. But yeah, that is technically, and we have done dog research obviously is the biggest thing. We have done dog research live, where I enter new dogs and find images and stuff for future TikTok videos and such. So I mean, yeah, that's definitely possible. I know we have one question that is still in the queue, but I'll say for anybody, we're probably gonna wrap up pretty soon, so any other questions for Casey or for myself, put them in the chat. Otto had a question about the illustration book that you had. I think, Otto, you were asking what medium the lions are. You just kind of said how do they draw those, but I'm wondering, are you asking kind of what medium, if they're sketches or pastels or
I'm pretty sure most of his work is in oils, or acrylic, but I actually don't know his medium of choice. It could be pastels, frankly. But if you want to look up the artist, his name is Reen Portfleet. Let's see if I can get this on the camera here. Reen Portfleet, Noah's Ark. It's kind of hard to read these names, but
yeah.
Not gonna. I have a new setup here today. There it is, Portfleet.
Portfleet.
Not a pro. I'm not a pro, guys. I just play one on Twitch.
Portfleet.
Yeah, Portfleet is the last name, and the first name is Rien, R-I-E-N, I think. He's a Dutch artist. If you want to look him up.
Okay, so you were asking, Otto, if they actually are drawing live lions. I'm not sure. It just depends. But
yeah,
I know we joked about.
He was probably at the zoo.
Potentially, yeah. I know we joked about at the beginning that in The Lion King that we know that the animators did get to observe like real lions that came in, but I'm not sure. It always is hard to tell if people are, especially from that time period. Like he is at a time period where he could go to a zoo, or he could watch a video or pictures of lions to use as studies.
I want to say his work is oils. I actually got to go to the Rien Portfleet Museum when I was in Rotterdam, which if anyone is going to Twitch EU, I think that's in Rotterdam again this year. I can't remember. Cool. It was in Rotterdam last year, so if it's there again this year, I highly recommend going to that museum to see his work in person. But I can tell you he's also the guy he's the gnomes guy. You guys might know him better for his gnomes book. So if you've ever seen that book, or if you've seen the show David the Gnome, that's the artist that like did that whole thing. So you might be more familiar with his work than you think you are. So if you've ever seen this before,
Yes, I have seen this.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He got famous for this, and then he was able to do a whole bunch of like just illustration books after that for the rest of his life and just paint, which is like such a dream. So, yeah, he's an amazing naturalist painter. So, yeah. So if you can't find his name or you can't remember how to spell it, just look up the Gnomes artist or the Gnomes book, and you'll find him.
So Otto's actually asking, because that book is about Noah's Ark, did he depict both a male lion and a female lion? Because he said that it's a more common mistake than you think. It's similar to cardinals. Cardinals, there was a really funny meme on TikTok where it's like, oh my god, all these cardinals are gay, and it's because there's these two little bright red cardinals rather than one female and one male cardinal. And I was like, oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, no, he did. He was a true naturalist, so like he was very familiar with like biology and animals and evolution and all that stuff. So like you definitely get you see all the animals
one of each.
But I think it was honestly just kind of an excuse for him to show off all of his like naturalist work and his love of animals, which I totally support.
Yeah, no, I think Noah's Ark is a great example because it is implied that every animal is on there, so you might as well like try your best to get as many animals as you can.
You got to. You're just doing your job.
Yeah.
I was gonna see if I find you a picture, but yeah, he's definitely got more than just the male lion. So
yeah. But yeah, that is a definitely good point, because there are definitely artists that again this is more consumer art, but it's like two bright red cardinals next to each other, and I'm like, yep, gay cardinals, absolutely. Only option.
People just don't think about that stuff sometimes. I think I'm getting a signal drop here. Sorry, am I still alive?
You are still alive, at least I can see
good.
you. Yeah.
I'm having I might be buffering on my screen, but I'm glad it's going through on yours. This PC is still having some weird problems I gotta figure out.
Sorry
but
about
at least
that.
It didn't crash, so
at least it didn't crash. Yes, that was a fear that we had the entire time, but yeah, if I knew how to use like actually do computers, I would love like to actually know what I'm doing, because we've been having some lovely little glitches, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is a problem, but I guess we'll just keep going until something happens.
Yeah, thank you, Fonty, for checking. Yeah, I was trying to fix it all myself, but I've had so many issues this whole year. I'm just ready to move on from tech problems, so I did finally just take it into a shop. But I don't want to get into all that on your stream. But yeah, tech issues can be very very frustrating for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Does anyone have any other questions for Casey about artists? I'm trying to think of a good like final question, but I feel like we covered it when we were talking about like our favorite animated movies. I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If there's one thing about your field that you want people to walk away with today, whether it's the importance of it or a fun fact or just like anything like that you just, if you remember nothing else about Egyptology or archaeology, remember this, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to archaeology, it is a science. It is like, I still don't think of it as a science in a lot of ways. It is like people say it's a social science, but it is a science.
Yeah.
It goes through the scientific method, just not the method that you would think it does. And it is, archaeologists do what they do to protect and preserve and record the history of people before us. And a lot of people have, I mean, I get the archaeologists are looters all the time. I get that all the time in my chat. And I say, okay, here's the difference. Looting is for financial gain. Archaeology is for protection and knowledge and gain of knowledge. And all we want to do is protect the sites. This is another random tangent, but I get this all the time where people are like, archaeologists are hiding stuff from us. Unfortunately, we do have to hide some stuff until we are ready to publish it and talk about it. Because if we actively talk about it while we are sitting at the dig, if we go on Instagram Live and saying, we're at a dig, here's our exact location,
right?
People will loot. Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in today, and the difference of respect and understanding of how our cultures are different all over the world. And so just wait. We would love to talk to you about all the random tiny little things. You just have to be a little patient with us. For Egyptology, I think my biggest thing is their art is functional. Everything they have had a function. Every piece of art that is on the walls of tombs and temples and palaces, they all have a function. Some of the functions are, yes, to be aesthetic, but most of them are dual functions. They are meant to be beautiful, and then they are meant to convey something with their world around them. Every tomb wall is decorated with pictures of their life and their afterlife and what they want to achieve. And this is mainly coming from a world that is very much illiterate. Estimations are like 1 to 5%. It is meant to be functional in that it conveys what they want the people, what they want others to know about them, what they want the gods to know about them, everything. And so the artifacts that we see, they are not all art. They are not all, and this includes mummies too. These are not just random pieces of art. These are real people and the things that they interacted with in their lives.
Yeah. That's good.
Absolutely. And Otto actually asked one of the questions I was going to ask you, what's your favorite medium of art? And I think that's a great one to end.
Yeah, my absolute favorite is actually sculpture. But sculpting
Really?
is a very sculpting is a very difficult medium to actually make a living doing. So I don't get to do it very often, but yeah, I do sculpt sometimes. I do it once a month on stream. At the end of the month is usually
Is
my
that
sculpting stream.
clay or
Yeah,
mixed
so
media?
I use polymer. I use a
Okay.
polymer clay. I wish I had one handy. But yeah, I do a polymer clay
Okay,
like
cool.
called sculping. If you're familiar with sculpting.
Yeah, absolutely. I
On
love
air
sculpting.
dry. It's actually an oil-based clay. So for anyone who's not used it before, the reason I like it is that you can kind of put it down for a while and it will stay workable. I actually had a sculpture that sat for 5 years unbaked, and I was able to finish it later, bake it, paint it, and then it hardened.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to kind of rework it a little to kind of soften it up again, but it doesn't dry out. So it's really nice because you can constantly change and add, and you can take your time with it, and I really like it. Eventually I like to switch to cost clay, but if I had to choose like a physical medium, I would say sculpting for sure.
Yeah.
I love working with my hands and like forming things into life. There's just something
I love
about that whole process that just feels very, I don't want to say magical, but it's just extremely fun to me to like watch something physically take shape in front of you.
I love that you said bringing it to life, because if you didn't know, I would say that your patron god is the god Khnum. He has like a goat head but he is known as the sculptor, and he had on the potter's wheel, he sculpted human beings and gave them life.
Oh, I love it.
And
love
that is
that.
like literally you exactly said that, like Khnum is that he is on the potter's wheel and he sculpts people, and his wife breathes life into them, and that is how people were
Very
created.
cool.
And so he's a huge creator god in that sense, but it is that physical creating on the potter's wheel, which is so cool.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so that's my favorite. I work mostly digitally because it's easier to deliver, but if I had to pick, it would be sculpting.
Oh, I love that. I loved pottery. I did pottery for my last year of undergrad, and I loved doing pottery. And I wish I had a potter's wheel and all that. But yeah, it's a awesome field.
Yeah, I wish I had access to a kiln, but
oh, I wish. Yeah.
I carried around a bunch of low fire white, like 50 pounds of low fire white clay for about 10 years, hoping I would come across a kiln, and I finally gave it to somebody. I was like, I'm never gonna find a kiln.
Was a giant brick in my parents' garage because I found like a community pottery studio, and then I went once and it completely intimidated me because I had only been in a classroom setting with like access to everything and doing all this stuff, and so there was a big bunch of clay that we finally got rid of.
It's so expensive and it hurts to give it away, but yeah. It's heavy and annoying to move around. So,
absolutely.
It is what it is.
All right, I think we are going to wrap up. Obviously everybody on my channel, you should follow Casey Snow Art. How often do you stream or talk about art on your page?
Yeah, I can. If it's okay, I have some commands I can type that will help answer that
Perfect.
too. But I have a schedule Monday through Thursday right now for the art gym. That's the study session. So if anybody wants to come learn and develop an art skill, I would say the biggest thing that I talk about probably the most is that art is a skill, not a talent. I know that that's a little semantic for some people and they just mean it as a compliment, but I do want to reinforce, especially in the world of AI, like,
Yeah.
this is not a magical thing that some people are just born with. Like, I've spent my entire life developing the skill, and anybody can commit the time to do that. And so I try to encourage people to study with me, and we do that in the morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, which I think is 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm pretty
I
sure.
think so, yeah.
10
I think
Central,
that's
11,
I think it's 2 hours,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 2 hours. And we do that from 9 to 11, Monday through Thursday. And then in the afternoons, I'm crazy and I stream twice a day sometimes. So I stream in the afternoons on Mondays and Wednesdays, and those tend to be my project streams. Like, I'll do sculpture or illustration, or sometimes we'll do special events. I'm actually going to be I'm hoping to do more, if it's okay for me to show you some stuff.
Go for it.
I'm hoping to do more plein air painting, which is when you go out and you like paint and draw in the world. We did some plein air stuff last month in gouache in Colorado. I live in Colorado, and I'd love to do more sketch hikes and things. We went to the foothills and to Red Rocks in Denver. And so I'm actually going to do a subathon starting next week to raise money for an IRL rig. So if anyone's interested, even in just coming and lurking and supporting that, that's going to be starting Monday afternoon at 4 during my afternoon streams. Most of the time, though, I'm not doing. It's my first time doing like an official subathon, really.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of nervous, but I'd love to do more stuff like that. Do more traditional work. Do more learning art stuff on my stream. Sometimes I play games. I'll actually be playing a game tomorrow. My community has voted on me playing Paleo Pines. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like a cozy dinosaur ranching game.
I have heard of that.
I will be playing it all day tomorrow because that's what they earned. So I'll be starting in the morning and going all day. But I don't normally stream games, so I'm typically doing art on my stream. And if I play a game, it's usually either art-based or animal-based. So yeah, that's when you can find me next. Typically, it's Monday through Thursday in the morning, or Monday and Wednesday in the afternoons.
Awesome. Yeah. For anybody interested
for my community, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone interested, I stream 3 times a week. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Sometimes those get rearranged because as a museum educator, I don't have weekends. Right. I don't have anything. And so I typically am doing 2 games a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Saturdays it mixes in between. We do the Beyond Denial guest lecture series from March to September. And so that's 2 out of 4 Saturdays is I do a lecture and I have a guest do a lecture, although those do change. It's not always Saturdays. And then any Saturday in between, we do a Drifting Down Denial discussion stream. We have been doing some community game nights as well. The current games that I'm playing, Thursdays is our Assassin's Creed night. We've been playing going through all the Assassin's Creed games. So currently we are in the American Revolution in Assassin's Creed 3. We just totally didn't die at Bunker Hill like 3 times. But we're always kind of talking about history at the same time. These are obviously not my specialties in time period, but we like doing little research ticks as well. And then Tuesday, we do not have a reliable game, although I was just recommended an archaeology game. So we're going to play that next Tuesday, really indie game. But yeah, I know I saw one more question. I think it's more on my side. Thank you, Alex, for putting it in. How bad do you think a lack of historical awareness is in general, and what do you think can be done to improve it? And it's really low. And I see encouragement with little kids that I work with at our museums, and I get the kids that they know so much, and they honestly know too much, and I'm just like, how do you know that so much detail about this battle from like the Napoleonic Wars? What are you talking about? And so I see the amazing like opportunities that kids have brought of being interested in archaeology and being interested in history, but there's like kind of a middle ground of like there's so much like a lack of historical awareness, and a lot of it is putting it into context of the time and putting it into how recent it is in some cases. United States, it is, yeah, you're right, it is based state by state. And I described earlier, like my state of Virginia, all of my Catholic school education focused on barely Native Americans, but like American Revolutionary War to Civil War. I have very little knowledge of things that are going on post Honestly, I know a lot about World War One and World War Two, but everyone jokes that sometimes I forget the years because I don't know the years for those. But like anything 1900s is a struggle for me a lot of times because I did not get a very big basis of it. To really improve, again, is what Casey was saying, is we have to be curious, and we also have to have science communicators. And sometimes I'll see comments and it'll be literally the simplest question, and I'm always just like, why didn't they just Google that? And I sometimes am like, that's like the easiest question. Like, you can get that answer in 5 seconds in Googling it. But I realize they are asking me because they're seeing me as an expert, and they would rather have that answer come from me than from straight up in the internet. And so having science communicators and having the curiosity to continue to learn. If I'm watching a historical drama or historical movie, I am sitting there on the Wikipedia reading along everything, critiquing the movie in its own way, but saying, okay, this is about a historical person. I really want to know all the details that they're not going to talk about in this movie, and kind of being that conscious like choice of like, I want to learn more, even if this movie is just talking about a small portion of somebody's life or an event.
Yeah.
Very much
it's important stuff. And I think that personal connection that you pointed out is kind of important too, because if they get to know you on a stream, it's almost like you develop trust. It's like they've been able to observe how you answer questions and how you carry yourself and how you analyze things, and it's different than just letting Google search results, hopefully, maybe, possibly, especially these days, give you anything close to a right answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we are gonna let Casey go. And we'll chat for a little bit longer, but we'll go find someone lovely to go and raid.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me come on. And again, anybody in my community who has not already, please do go follow MelissainDeNile as well. Thank you so much for having us. It was lovely to get to mingle with everybody in chat. Thank you to everybody in chat for asking questions and being curious. And I saw a lot of great conversations. We didn't have time to respond to everything, but I loved all the conversations you guys were having about all the topics. And stay curious, right? Just
stay curious. That is the motto of today.
Yeah.
But
you guys have a good night, and thank you again for having us on.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much. It was so nice to meet you guys. Thank you.